20 years after attempting an epic pub crawl, 5 childhood friends reunite when one of them becomes hell-bent on trying the drinking marathon again. They are convinced to stage an encore by mate Gary King, a 40-year-old man trapped at the cigarette end of his teens, who drags his reluctant pals to their hometown and once again attempts to reach the fabled pub, the World's End. As they attempt to reconcile the past and present, they realize the real struggle is for the future, not just theirs, but all of mankind's. Reaching the World's End is the least of their worries. Welcome to another feature presentation of Midnight Double Feature, and on this episode we'll be covering 2013's The World's End, directed by Edgar Wright. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome back to Midnight Double Feature. Here we are covering The World's End, written by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, directed by Edgar Wright. The Edgar Wright to my Simon Pegg. Because I mean, I'm the ginger here, so is he, I guess. But how you doing, Zoe?
Oh wow, I am. I don't know, man. I'm so flustered. I don't consider myself half as smart as Edgar Wright, dude. I
could have made you the fat one.
I know. the Nick Frost. No, man, I'm good. It's good to be back here in the main feed after a while. We haven't been here for a minute, right? I mean, you know, we've been doing a lot of our bonus stuff, but I guess the last time we were on the main feed was May. May.
Damn.
Yeah.
2 months off. That's crazy.
Crazy, dude. But it's good to be back.
But if you missed us that much, it's on the Patreon. So there you go.
Right. There you go.
But just want to say off the top, thanks for everyone MIA for a minute. Had a lot of life shit going on. If you ever miss us that much, you can go to Patreon at Double Feature, become a member of the Green Room. $5 a month, you get 2 extra episodes a month. God, what are we up to? 80 or 90 episodes now?
Yeah, 86. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah.
Something like that, high 80s. Also, some notes right off the top. Obviously, we're going to spoil this movie. There's an E on this motherfucker for a reason. We're gonna be going through the whole thing from tip to tap. We haven't done this in a while, but we'll try to keep it as concise as possible. We're not going to cover every little fucking, because this is an Edgar Wright movie. You could spend. Dude, the cracks are so deep in some of this foundation where it's like, oh, this is a reference to that, and then this references this. We're not going to cover every single fucking lick of that. Like, we're going to talk about a lot of it, but we also have a movie to talk about as well. And again, we are going to spoil it. So if you haven't seen this movie in 11 years, that's not our problem. But this was my pick. Obviously, anybody who has
really was this your pick, Colin? I don't think our listeners could guess that, dude.
Yeah,
that's so crazy. Actually, I think Hot Fuzz was my pick, so maybe people are. Yeah,
I don't know. I think I did pick all the Cornetto movies because we were like, you know what, let's knock out some big ones, and I was like, fuck it, let's do Hot Fuzz because it had been. I was extremely trepidatious from that about doing Hot Fuzz because we were going to do them in order. And
very early.
Hot Fuzz took like another 5 years to get out. I love this trilogy. If you don't know me, my name's Colin and I love Edgar Wright. I'm a big fan of his movies, more so the earlier ones. We can talk about Last Night in Soho. I think we did on a bonus episode, actually, at some point. I think we did Last Night in Soho. But I'm a big fan of his. I love Simon Pegg. I love Nick Frost. I think
we did Baby Driver as well as a mainline episode.
That's true. Yeah, we did Baby Driver as well. So if you
and Scott Pilgrim, have we done his entire? Hang on.
Well, we haven't done a feature of Last Night in Soho, but yeah, no, we have.
That's right.
We haven't done a Fistful of Fingers, the very first independent nothing thing he made when he was like a child.
That doesn't count. But
you can watch it though. You can watch it online. I kind of want to.
I'm just looking at it. Dude,
but yeah, I think we've
covered pretty much his entire filmography. That's wild.
Which, to be fair, over the course of since 2004, 20 years, he's made 5 movies.
Well, I mean, sure, but I mean, is there any other director? I mean, like Damien Chazelle's made 4 movies. We've covered like 1, right?
I guess so. You're more of the Damien Chazelle. I mean, I like him, but yes, I think Edgar Wright is because the thing is though, is like I love Cornetto and then Danny loves Baby Driver. I think Matt loved Scott Pilgrim more than any of us. So like it was actually, that's one of the things I do love about Edgar Wright is that we all like him for just various different reasons and stuff. Like Danny's not a big horror movie fan, but he loves Baby Driver. And I'm not a huge Last Night in Soho fan, but I love the Cornetto trilogy and Scott Pilgrim is pretty cool, but it's not my go-to Edgar Wright movie.
For me, that's Hot Fuzz. I do love that there is like in his filmography, and I know we haven't like sort of got into him yet, but like there is like he's so versatile, like that, you know, he can like potentially like hit out to each one of us. So like you just said, right? So for Matt, it was Scott Pilgrim. For Danny, it was Baby Driver. For you, it's probably Shaun of the Dead. For me, it's Hot Fuzz, right? Like it's like he's got these like monumental movies in his filmography that just like really kind of like hit each one of us pretty hard.
And all extremely good, like genre movies. Like he's just so. To be honest, like when you think of an actor, a director like Edgar Wright, it's like there aren't really a lot like him who could do Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, Baby Driver, Scott Pilgrim, and it's like, dude, name me one other director who's done a comic book film, an action like heist film, a horror movie, and a buddy cop movie. And it's like, I don't know anybody off the top of my head, honestly, who's dipped their toe into that much genre. But it's also Edgar Wright is one of those guys who like the foot is almost always in comedy as well. All of those movies are also comedies. Scott Pilgrim, Baby Driver, like there's so much humor behind it. But he just masters both of those like so well. But like I said, as you can tell, I'm a big Edgar Wright fan. I'm happy to be wrapping up the Cornetto trilogy because I'm excited to talk about this. Obviously it's my pick. I like it a lot. I've talked to, you know, I know we've talked about it a little bit on this one, on the podcast before, but not a whole lot. But I'll turn it over to you. Is this your first time seeing this?
No, I watched this in 2013 at the movies. Actually, before we do go on, I'm going to plug our TikTok, which hasn't been plugged before yet. So,
go for it. Cool.
No. We're like that's literally it. We're now on TikTok, guys. So actually, I'm on TikTok. It's just literally my face speaking on camera, and I hate it. I hate it so much. But as I was telling you off air, dude, I'm just like, man, like. The world is moving towards video, unfortunately. So my fucking face is out there in my car, like talking to my phone by myself about movies that are out right now. So, and we do pretty well, sort of like engagement wise. So, yeah, go check it out. It's just Midnight Double Feature. I think it's Midnight Double Feature podcast. But either way, just
Mister, we're never gonna have a TikTok. We got a TikTok.
I know. Dude, it's
out of necessity.
In my defense, I held off for 6 fucking years. You know, like yeah. But also I've been posting the same sort of TikToks on YouTube in sort of like a longer format or whatever, which are doing well as well. So if you do want to see us or see me talk about movies. You can just head to YouTube as well, which we have a channel for. So, Midnight Double Feature. But anyway, so going back to this, yeah. So I did see this at the movies in 2013. I watched this with I actually have a very vivid memory of watching this movie the first time. So I went to go watch this with my mate Damien, and we went to a cinema to watch it. I don't know. I think we just like had like lunch or something beforehand, and then we went to go watch it. And we left about half an hour before the end of the movie because we did not want to pay for parking.
That's fucking funny.
Because we're 20 years old, dude, and we're just like, and you know what? And here's another thing, and this is going to kind of giving my thoughts away. We were just not vibing with the movie. We were honestly. I
was going to ask if the movie was good enough, would you have paid for parking? But that answers it.
100%. And I think it. I mean, like this is the nuts and bolts of this movie. It all hinges on this tonal shift, this genre switch that happens in the bathroom in the movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just like this big shift, and it like the movie completely hinges on that one moment. And I've seen this movie about 3 or 4 times now, and for me it never works. I can't get this fucking movie to work for me. You know what I mean? Like I sent you a message after I'd finished watching this for the podcast, and I was just like, are you sure you want to choose this movie? And you're just like, dude, if it's just going to get shit on for like 2 hours, not really. And I'm just like, no, I don't think I'm going to shit on it, because I really do want to kind of like get to the root of like why people think it's good. And it to me, it just feels like Edgar Wright light. Like, it doesn't feel like unbridled Edgar Wright, which to me is Hot Fuzz. It's easily the most. It's easily the worst in the Cornetto franchise, and I think that's not. I don't think that's a controversial opinion. I think that's like a lot of people think that. I'm going to read a comment here, and I think it really kind of like hits the nail on the head. And this comes from Danielle Cutter. I know we do sort of like hold our comments to the end, but I'm going to read this at the beginning.
She's royalty. It's fine.
She's royalty. She's paid her way literally. Yeah. She's made us do sex act for money. That's fine. She says, "The World's End is my least favorite out of the Cornetto trilogy. I don't find it funny, and I don't really like any other characters. Worse than that, I don't find it memorable. Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead had something special for me, and there's nothing special about The World's End." And honestly, dude, I feel it. I feel that comment. Like, because there are times when I can latch onto something in this movie, and that is, I love Simon Pegg's sort of like sort of arc in the story about like this big kid who just could never move on. I just don't think that he does anything that's like out of that. You know what I mean? I don't love the conclusion to it. I don't know. Like, none of these characters really sort of like reverberate for me. And that makes this a kind of like a tough watch. Like, you know what I mean? Because especially it is a very incredibly character-driven movie with these like very like big pulpy science fiction elements. I think the fucking robots are just stupid, dude. I think they're fucking dumb, man. And that might be out of, that might be purposeful. I have to give someone on Edgar Wright's caliber a whole lot of credit, man, because like I feel like he knows.
Right. Like, your expectations are a lot higher.
100%, because I feel like he is smart enough to know what is goofy and what isn't goofy. And I refuse to believe that he unintentionally was like, let's make these robots as legit as possible. There's no fucking way. He made these things goofy on purpose for sure. But I just don't think it vibes with the movie. I like it doesn't fit for me. It's just too on the level of just like, what the fuck are we doing here? The action sequences to me are just like, can we just fucking move on? They're way too long. Like, let's fucking go. I don't know, man. But look, I am here for the Die Another Day fucking reunion with Pierce Brosnan and Rosamund Pike, because
yeah.
Dude,
and Timothy Dalton and Hot Fuzz.
There you go. Yeah. When I saw Pierce Brosnan, I was just like, hubba, man. Hubba, fucking hubba.
Yeah. He definitely looks like he would be Shakespeare, like he has that kind of like look.
100%. Yeah,
but look, I will.
No,
go ahead.
I'm pretty much done. I just want to say, I kind of want to. I don't know. I want you to tell me why you really dig this movie, because I'm trying to, for years, probably for 10, 11 years now, I've been trying to unsolve this Pandora's box of a movie.
Right.
Because like I was like nervous to kind of come onto the mics here because I don't really know how to articulate my thoughts on this movie, because I don't really know how to feel about it. Like, this is just one of those movies where I'm just like, man, I don't know how I feel about this movie. Sometimes I'm really vibing on the jokes. Sometimes I'm really turned off, and I absolutely hate parts of this movie. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's so tough.
No, and I will start off with the concession is that I agree with a lot of your points. That like I think it's the weakest one, and Danielle's too. I think it's the weakest one out of the Cornetto trilogy. It has the most like swing and a miss jokes of any of the Cornetto, I do love the purposeful, like, shitty jokes, but it's like, let's get this antique on the road show. And it's like supposed to be bad. But then there's parts where he's like, he's a big man, baby, a maybe. And I was like, really? That's a terrible joke. That's something that I could come up with. Like, that's not a good joke. But there's a lot of like weak soft spots in this movie that I feel like it's just like, it's like Flanders looking through his new house, when the Simpsons show up, and it's patchy and it's fucked up and it's not what you expected. And I think the movie, one thing, suffers from too many characters. I like Steven, I like Peter, I like O-Man, but
I love all of the actors. All of these actors
Yes.
are huge, by the way. Now,
yes, this is like an Avengers of like English actors.
I really wonder, whether Edgar Wright looks back on this movie and was just like, "Holy shit, dude! I'm glad that I got these. How did I get these actors for what I paid them for? Because they're worth so much more money now." Dude,
he's like the voice of the network at the end.
Paddy Considine. I mean, he's killing it right now. Was killing it right now in House of the Dragon. Like he was huge. But like he was also in the Bourne movies as well.
Dude, he's in a band called Riding the Low, and it's this like post-punk like hardcore rock band, and I'm like, what? That is fucking cool, dude. And like I follow him on Instagram, and he is a cool motherfucker, dude. I like Paddy Considine a lot.
Probably the MVP out of this entire group is Martin Freeman. I mean, Martin Freeman's just like, I mean, he was obviously went on to do The Hobbits, but
I love Martin Freeman, but the guy that plays Peter, I cannot. He's in
Eddie Marsan. He's in so many things, dude.
Can I be honest? He's my MVP of this movie. I think he is fucking hilarious. Like the beginning of this movie, he is the most quiet, like, you know, he's this very meek, quiet, like he nails that character like right away. Can I
just give you like a couple of things that he's been in? Eddie Marsan.
Sure, yeah. He's in a lot of stuff.
He's probably got the most versatile filmography. Like, okay, so here we go. The V for Vendetta, Mission Impossible 3, Hancock, Sherlock Holmes, Warhorse, obviously The World's End, Ray Donovan, Deadpool 2. Like you know what I mean? Like I just like they just keep going. Like there's so much more than that. I'm just reading a few. But he's an incredible actor. Pops up in so many things, dude.
But he is my MVP of this movie, and because like by the end of it, he is this like drunken, slobbering mess, and he's having fun. Like he's the only other one besides Gary that's having fun, and that makes me love Peter in this movie. Like he's so fucking funny, and I was expecting for it to be like Nick Frost or Paddy Considine, but not Peter. Like Peter would end up being the one. What is it? Eddie? What? What's his name?
Eddie Marsan.
Eddie Mar. I almost said Eddie Redmayne. Yeah, he ends up being my MVP of this. Like he makes me laugh the most. But like I said, I love this movie, and I think that it's definitely the weakest of the trilogy. I think it might also be like my personal favorite. Now, I don't think it's the best, but it's my personal favorite because it's like, I'll be honest, Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead have gotten like worn the fuck out to me after a while. I love them. I love them so much, but they've been talked about and played and covered and like just so much. And I think there's something that I like about the World's End that like I haven't beat it to fucking death. So that's one thing that like I have to like sometimes take into consideration is like I was not 15 watching this 20 times over at somebody's house every weekend. You know, like it is somewhat fresher to me than like the other ones. But I think beyond that is like I like the fact that it's sci-fi and that it has this kind of very adult themes of like alcoholism and suicide and stuff like that, because it's really autobiographical of what like Simon Pegg was going through at the time. I think they said that he had gotten out of like a rehab weeks before they started like filming this for alcohol and stuff. And I think that like there's something about these kind of like guys that I love, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. It's like you watch Space, you watch Shaun of the Dead, you watch Hot Fuzz, and eventually it is like, yeah, like I feel like this is it leaves me with like a good taste in my mouth as a conclusion of like a trilogy. But I think the way that it's packaged and delivered is very like you said, it's very Edgar Wright light. Now, even Edgar Wright light is fucking fun to watch. Like, I still like it. Like, but why I was too expecting Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz when I first saw it, and not getting that, I was like, it's good. It's definitely the weakest. Like, I knew right away. I was like, this is definitely the weakest of the three. Like, and it's good, but I think for one thing, they waited too long to make it. I think this should have been made in like, you know, because Shaun of the Dead's 04, 07, and then 2013. I was like, dude, you waited almost 7 years to do this. I was like, I feel like this should have been made in like 2010, 2009, 2011. Like, I feel like they just waited a little too long to like the heat of the Cornetto trilogy had already kind of died away, you know, like it just felt weird. It just felt kind of like late. And I think that I like the movie because of the more like adult themes of growing up and like seeing your friends kind of, you know, move away or get married or have kids and kind of lose that spark, that little sparkle. And like that is honestly one of the things that I'm not afraid of like much like existentially, but that is one of the few things that does terrify me is like growing up and not talking to your friends and not even making new friends or not being into like movies or just kind of like, I feel like old people as they get older, they get very like insular, you know, and they don't socialize a lot anymore and they kind of cut themselves off. And I think that this movie is like, I think it complements the trilogy as a whole, but also like stands on its own two legs. But they're definitely shaky legs. Like they're definitely shaky. I see everybody's like complaints about this movie. I've heard people try to argue this is the best in the trilogy. It's not the best in the trilogy. It might be your favorite, but it's objectively not the best in the trilogy. It has weird J.J. Abrams like lens flares at times. Like it doesn't really know. And I love the whole angle of the town being replaced, but there's
it's his like sort of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of like thing, right? I mean, he, like, Edgar Wright, like you said. It's better than Edgar Wrong. Anyway, so like, it's better. Ooh, we are cancelled. Like you said, he plays with genre in all of these movies, right? And I love police action films. So I think maybe that's why like Hot Fuzz really speaks to me. But I also love science fiction, and why does this one not work with me? The science fiction elements in this one just completely fall flat for me, like altogether.
Well, they feel like no threat, you know?
No, they never feel like a threat, and they're just so goofy. And I tell you what, though, I love the visual of their like. The eyes and the mouth, the open mouth.
And
the hand out and the siren sort of like noise. Why is the statue one of them? I don't like. Okay. Yeah, man.
Well, and I, as somebody who loves like 70s and 80s like practical horrors, like the one thing I did notice about this time around that I was like, I'm kind of disappointed by like the insane amount of digital effects in this movie. It feels weird compared to Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz that have these amazing, like you see a guy's head get smashed in a bear trap and it's largely practical. And I think that this movie kind of suffers from that. Like the digital stuff is prevalent and doesn't look amazing. It looks okay. It looks good enough.
It's got that 2013 sort of like sheen to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like they were all
like
doing
the day the Earth stood still with like Keanu Reeves kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like it kind of has that visual, and like when it's not on the digital stuff, like I think this has some of the best visuals of any of the movies, of like the beers getting filled up, and when it cuts to the water it's like quieter and it's very calming film, and I love the shots.
I mean it's from Hot Fuzz, right? I mean like he's kind of like reusing his bag of tricks.
Well, that's like that Evil Dead motif of them like, and it would show them like grabbing something and it would zoom in and like it's just
they
very
did the
quick.
fence thing again.
And that's another like I don't mind some of like the fan servicey moments, the Cornetto wrapper blowing up, and so like Julia Deakin, who plays the innkeeper that they stay at, she's his landlord in space, and like the bartender at the end, the one who's like explains the beer, and he's like, it's got this fruity yet something note that hangers on the tongue. Like that's Markeep. He's one of the roommates in Spaced, and like I love seeing stuff like that. But this definitely felt like a goodbye to like that kind of like we've done 3 movies, we've done a TV show, we're not going to be working together again for a while. And sure enough, I think Simon Pegg and Nick Frost have done a couple of things. They did like a little bit of Truth Seekers, and then they did some movie called Slaughterhouse Rules that I never saw.
I'll tell you what I, in my mind, replaced this movie as the final Cornetto movie. Paul. You seen Paul?
Oh, I do love Paul.
Paul's fucking good, man. Like, just
I think objectively it's a better movie than this, but I like this. I still like this one better only because it's got Edgar Wright attached to it. Like that, if Paul was directed by Edgar Wright, I would be like, hell yeah. I think I would like that one more, honestly. But there's something like about
an alien with 4 tits. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, he's like, did you buy a book? No, then fuck off.
Fuck off.
I love Jeffrey Tambor.
Me and my brother quote that all the time, dude. That's fucking funny.
Adam Shadowchild. Anyway,
fucking Sigourney Weaver shows up at the end.
Yeah,
his name's Lorenzo Zoil. Sorry. Okay,
no, you're good. I like this movie a lot. I think there's a lot of missteps, but the positives I think are the way that the chemistry between the 5 guys is immaculate. I don't think at any point do I feel like a lull in any of their conversations and stuff. I love Rosamund Pike in this. I love crumbs. Like, I don't know why she has such a small role, and I kind of wish it was Jessica Stevenson from Shaun of the Dead and Space and stuff, but it always bums me out that they didn't put her in anything after Shaun of the Dead. But the relationship between all the characters and where it kind of ends up, I like all of it because it feels like that. You know, it does kind of feel like as they're getting older, you know, these guys are in their 40s. This does feel like a respectful conclusion to, like, we're not pub crawling anymore. We're not 20 making this like renegade show for the BBC.
I felt that.
Like, we're not.
I felt
right.
That.
I feel like this is like a goodbye to like a lot of that stuff because, and it makes sense knowing where Simon Pegg and Nick Frost kind of were. Like, I don't think they drink at all anymore. I think they were really having problems with alcohol, and they kind of let it get to them. And I love that this movie kind of has like elements of that. But I think that there's a bit of a mixed message though when it comes to it of like, so what is the message that we're sending here? Like, Gary doesn't get better as a person, you know, like, but
right.
here's the thing though. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, World's End. Like, Shaun starts off as a little bitty boy and kind of ends as a man, right? Like a grown man at the end of that movie. No, he doesn't. He doesn't learn anything. He gets everybody killed. He goes back home like nothing ever happened. And he keeps Ed in a shed in the back of the yard. And it's like Hot Fuzz. It's like, yeah, he never really learned. He learns to loosen up a little bit. But by the end of it, it's still him like in this like ultra fascistic kind of car, like peeling out. And it's like, yeah, did you really loosen up though? Like, I feel like there's a thing about his characters where it's like, I don't really feel like they ever come like something like Click, where Adam Sandler's like, I've learned my lesson and I appreciate my family.
Something so
and it's
overt. But
yes,
I think what he's going for here, I don't know what he's going for here. At least in those 2 movies, in Shaun of the Dead, you know what Edgar Wright's going for with his character, or like where he's like what his issues are and where he's trying to sort of end up, and whether he gets there or not, like that's a whole different story. But like in this, it's like we pivot to this whole new theme of freedom. Like,
yeah,
why are we now talking about? I guess like freedom to make your own decisions and freedom to, you know, do what you want, and like how you use whatever coping mechanisms to cope with whatever kind of like trauma that you have, right? I mean, like if I am like, because I'm like desperately trying to cling to something for this movie, dude, and I'm just like, because like it's pretty obvious at the end of the movie that like, you know, like we are humans, we have freedom, you know, that makes us different from you.
To err is human, to forgive is divine,
right?
You know,
and like. And the whole thing that, you know, the use of the word robots means slaves, like I get it. I get it. It's all there. It's all there in the text. But like at the same time, I feel like we're kind of like copping out here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's the best sort of like resolution for what's his name?
Gary King.
Yeah.
Well, and because part of you goes like, did the whole world have to end for this to happen? Like, why couldn't Newton Haven just be sucked into like a black hole? Like, that would have been perfectly fine. The whole town is robots.
Sick last 5 minutes though. Sick last 5 minutes.
Yeah, but well, my thing is like, I do think that the end of this, like when they get to the world's end and that thing starts descending down, even I was like, okay, man, like this is kind of going on. Like, this is getting ridiculous.
Imagine
like, because it's like, right. And by the end, like, then Gary decides the fate of like the entire world, and it doesn't really like make any like it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like the biggest thing I think I can kind of take away from it is like, I think that if you look at for the meaning of this movie, you're going to have to look at the first two and say like Shaun of the Dead is about being an adult, taking things a little bit more seriously. Hot Fuzz is about the overcorrectness of that. Like, no, now you're too stringent. Now you've grown up, and I think you need to mellow out a little bit. Like, you're a little bit too harsh. Like, the world is not black and white, Sergeant Angel. Like, it can't just be black and white like that all the time. But then I feel like this one is, I don't know, it almost feels like it's trying to say something of the two, because I think that there's a moment where Gary is right when he's like, you're just jealous of me because you don't have what I have. You don't have freedom. And they are kind of like, okay, yeah, kind of like we are kind of like Pete doesn't really talk to his kids. Like Steven is in love with dates a woman he's not in love with. You know, Andy's wife left with the kids. It's like their personal lives are all kind of shit. But what I think is interesting is like the fact that I think there is something to what Gary's saying of like, you wish you could just be like me and just turn it off and not have any of the problems of the corporate lawyers calling you and having to deal with this and having to deal with that. Like, I definitely think there's some truth to what he's saying, but at the same time, he's just gone. Like, I feel like it's a movie almost about like extremes and balances. Like the whole trilogy is like, yeah, it's fun doing this, but like you eventually have to get up and do the dishes and make the bed and stuff. Like, you can't just live in filth. And I feel like the movies are kind of jumping in between that. Like, I feel like this one is trying to say something about what Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead say about, you know, moderation. Like, I think that's a big thing that they're trying to say. It's like, you're either too lazy or you're too uptight. And I feel like this movie is kind of like, it's like one of the characters from Shaun of the Dead being in a movie with four characters from Hot Fuzz to me. Like, they're all a little bit too wound tight. And then there's Charlie Day, the wild card who cuts the brakes on the van. I think that there is something interesting about what they're saying of it shouldn't take the apocalypse to bring your friends together and find out what's important to you, you know? And I think
wild card bitches. Yeah.
Yeah. Wild card. Charlie, no one wants someone in the group who does irrational things on a whim. He's like, yeah. What do you think is happening right now? I love that fucking part. But basically, I love this movie because I do think it has like some jokes that suck, but the jokes that land are really, really fucking funny. And I do think they deserve to be up with some of the Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz joke. And I'll point them out as we go along. But I think that what this movie lacks in structure and plot and meaning, like it's all kind of sporadic. Like, I think there's something there, but it's so ambiguous as to not actually be there. Like, you could make a case for probably 10 different meanings of this movie, but I feel like what it lacks, it has so much more heart, I feel like, than the other two movies. Like, I love Hot Fuzz and I love Shaun of the Dead. I hate seeing Sean's mom die. Like, that's so gut wrenching. But the way Gary's like, well, they told me to go to bed. And I was like, oh, fuck, man. I don't know if I can watch this. Cause like, at my age, like, I have seen that, like, we've buried so many friends who had problems. Like, we've had to take people to rehabs. Like, it did hit home for me a lot, like, seeing that, because I was in bands and like I worked at a restaurant and a lot of people had substance abuse problems. And like, we had friends that overdosed and died. And it sucked to like see that, and to see what Gary was going through reminded me of way too many people. And like, that's because like, I think this movie hits with the right kind of audience if they've personally like kind of seen, because like I do see a lot of Gary in me, because it's like my friend group of my friends, like one of them works for like a cannabis company remote, makes really good money. One of them works for Dell in Texas. Another one works as like a radiology nurse who travels and makes like 80 grand a year. It's like, I work in a warehouse and make walls, you know? And it's like, there's something about Gary King that I can kind of relate with, of like, comparison is the thief of joy. That's why I don't do it. But if you look, you can see where Gary is kind of like, everyone is really starting to get ahead of me in life, and I still haven't figured anything out, but I'm like 42 years old, you know, like I feel an ounce of that at like, yeah, I don't have like a job that pays me 100 grand a year. Like, but it's not, you know, that's not something that's like, oh my God, I have to have that. But it is like,
no, I've definitely felt that too. Not particularly from the career perspective, but like definitely definitely the life perspective. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, most of my friends have moved out and you
Yeah.
know now live together with their partners and have families and you know this that and all the other. And you know, my partner and I are always going over to their places and whatever. It's tough because like I've been very open about that kind of stuff on this podcast. And like you know, my partner and I can only see each other on like pretty much only on weekends, which sucks until we sort out our sort of like living issues. So yeah, I definitely I vibe with that a lot with what you're saying. Like there is that part of them, and what you said about moderation kind of like really unlocked another part of this movie for me, which is great, which is exactly what I was looking for. So thank you so much. But like, I just wish it came off a bit more cohesive in the movie.
Mhm.
Like you know what
It's
I
very
mean? Like
scatterbrained.
I just. Right, exactly. It's like it doesn't seem. I don't know. Like I'm sure that was the intention, like what you're picking up about moderation, because it's all there. All the clues are there about moderation, and like, you know that finding a balance in your life is equilibrium, right? Like that's exactly what you want. You don't want to go too far in the extreme on either extreme. But I don't know. But let's go outside this door and fight fucking like goofy ass robots. Like,
Right.
do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think that's why for me the first half hour of this movie or 45 minutes. No, it's like 45 minutes before the robots show up. The first 45 to me is perfect. I love the way this movie starts before we get into the science fiction elements of it all.
But yeah, by the next hour, it's like, dude, we have been through like, because I think they hit at like the fourth or fifth pub, and it's like we have 6 more pubs to go, and like fourth or fifth, yeah, that's like 7 more pubs to go, and we're gonna be fighting robots the whole time. Like that's fucking crazy. And I do think the movie is a hair too long. It's like I feel like some of these pubs you could dwindle down or make something a little bit quicker. Like you need to get to like either cut the alien fighting parts out a little bit or pump up the first half a little bit more. But yeah, I definitely think that there's a little Gary King in like everybody, and like where we had such like a great friend group in middle school and high school where like we would go to the same house every weekend, play Halo 2, Halo 3, like when it was like the days of Halo and stuff. And we would go and play, we would go and play hide and seek at a park at night. We were like 18, 19, like we didn't drink or smoke weed or anything. And we would go and hang out and do stuff like that. And like, because for me, I had to be careful because it was like, I was getting too nostalgic about it sometimes. And you started thinking like, man, those really were the days. It's like, dude, you're 30 years old and like, you don't have like, there's so much life like ahead of you. Like, and I think that's something that Gary has fallen into of like, the best is behind me. And it's like, you're not that old, dude. It's really not like just because you missed a window of opportunity to like go to college or get like a 6-figure job or get married when you're 25 and have kids, like that doesn't necessarily mean that your life is a complete mess. And I think that's something that I relate to with Gary on is like, just because you got started late, at least you got fucking started, like at least you're married and you have a house and stuff like that. Like I can say that, but there's plenty of people that like, again, the comparison is a thief of joy, but like, it's kind of like when you put a goldfish in a new bowl, it always wants a bigger bowl. And it's like, that's one of those things where like, I think this movie kind of gives you that sense of like, take stock and appreciate what you have and don't let it be all the way at the end of the world when you appreciate those things of your friends and your family and all this stuff that I feel like the movie is trying to say of, don't wait to the end of the world to reconnect with these things and shit like that. But I don't know, like you said, it's so scattered. It's kind of hard to pick exactly what this movie is saying because it's so ambiguous as to be so many different things. And that's a pro kind of and largely a con because it's not this cohesive, like direct statement. But I think it does, like I said, where it lacks in a lot of that stuff. I feel like I do love the fight scenes. There's a couple of them I think go on a little bit too long, but I love the bathroom and the pub. Like those two are fucking fantastic. When I fucking hate this town, he like rips his shirt off. I absolutely love that shit. And I'm excited to get into it. And we'll start pretty much right here at the rip, unless you've got anything else you want to say before we jump into it.
No, this might have been our longest preamble of all time.
Well, it's the final of the
we're at
Cornetto.
41 minutes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I figured it would be long with because it's hard to talk about this one and not bring up the first two, and how it directly, it works and also doesn't work with the first two. One thing I've noticed about The World's End, and the last thing I'll say is the first two are so much more scarier than this. Even though the threat in the second one is definitely a human threat, I feel way more worried. Like when he kills the fingered her out by the duck pond, Martin Blower. Fucking kill Martin Blower. When they kill Martin Blower, that is terrifying. When they stab Leslie Tiller in the throat with her own shears, that is scary. Yeah. And Shaun of the Dead is plenty scary. And it's this movie needed that. If the aliens were scarier and you made that whole I think Gary
just less goofy, I think would have been so much more effective.
Because I think it kind of lends credence to what Gary is saying of I don't want to become one of those things because it's terrifying. And it's but join us. It'll be so much easier. It's but I don't want to. I think it would make them so much more antagonistic. I feel like it would make the fear of falling to them a little bit more palpable.
I'm curious what the thought process was behind this particular design of alien. And whether it was to make them a bit more sort of slave-like, and therefore they're literally just parts that you can put together. You know what I mean? They come apart like Legos, sort of thing.
Yeah, and honestly, I kind of wish it was straight up. It's aliens and robots, and it's well, no, I just wish it was biological aliens, like Skrulls or something. You know, something like that. Yeah. But we start in June of 1990 with all of our characters, as we talked about before. We kind of get this great little montage at the beginning showing what happened the first night of the pub crawl. Pete chucked a whitey and we had to bench him is probably my favorite line. I just don't. Pete chucked a whitey and we had to bench him. And we get all this awesome setup of kind of where our characters' relationships are. Rosamund Pike, I bumped into her again in The Disabled is a great line. I don't know why, it just makes me laugh. And I think that it's a great little montage of showing Pierce Brosnan and showing, where the kids' lives are at. But sorry. There we go. The transition over to Simon Pegg, you know what? It never did. It's that first time I caught that, that was jarring to me of oh shit. Okay. So he's kind of the scrummy one in this movie, which is something somehow we miss in our first 40 minutes is the fact that Nick Frost is the straight man. I love that. I think that's great because he's always the foil. He's Butterman. He's Ed. He never gets to be.
It's a nice little reversal.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I absolutely love that so much.
I just think with that reversal though, you kind of run the risk of you kind of run the risk of your main character not being likable, which is exactly how I feel, and I guess how Danielle feels. Because I just don't. I can never get out of that rut of I just don't feel anything for Gary. He's a piece of shit,
right? And that's the big thing is that's what I'm saying. There's times where I do relate to Gary, and then I'm I would never take my buddy's bass and drum and sell it for drugs. What a piece of shit.
I will never say that my mother died just so you can come on a fucking pub crawl, dude.
Right.
You fucking serious?
And but I think that there's something to say, I think, in his character that he's that despicable, yet I feel there are people that relate to elements of him. That's what I like is the fact that he's so irredeemable, yet there's parts of him that I felt that way.
You're talking about you're talking to a guy from Australia, dude. Binge drinking is our culture. It's our culture.
But we get the whole, basically the beginning of this, the failed pub crawl. We get introduced to Pierce Brosnan, Rosamund Pike's character. I love the whole beginning of this and the transition over to him in the AA meeting. Did you catch the woman next to him?
No.
It is Mary from Shaun of the Dead, the zombie. Listen here, Mary. the woman they fight in the garden.
Oh yeah.
I absolutely love that, and I think this might be one of my favorite opening of the trilogy, because it's cool. Him sitting there staring. I don't want to lose your love. Bum 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 bum. I ended up listening to that song for a whole summer by Primal Scream. It is so good. But I feel like that's when all of his movies have always had really good music, but this I feel like is when he started to get that cute kind of Baby Driver, like that kind of feel of his images and his music being a lot more in sync. But the first person that we go and pick on Peter, because Gary starts with the weakest person of the group, which is what I like. And he convinces Peter to come. Great line. He's like, she's a beauty. Yeah, but she's no beast. Like I do. There's parts where I love Gary because he is just like, I think Simon Pegg does nail it as like, he is impossible to pin down. You won't do it. And I love that. I love the fact that he is kind of this like force of nature, not a good one and not a helpful one in any way. And he lives in like an ecosystem, like what he does affects other people. But I love the fact that he just can't, like, they can't say no to him. Like if he applied this to getting a job and like being helpful, like he would rule the fucking world, but he's just lazy and wants to party, and that's it. Which is another thing that I can kind of.
I've never been to Bishop's Grange.
Yeah, that's great. But he does. He convinces Peter to go, and we right away we start to see there's something going on with Andy. He's like, Andy's going to come, and we see that, and he mentioned something about the accident, which we'll find out about later. We go to Patty Considine, who plays Steven, and I like, as it goes on, it gets harder to convince the guys. Like Peter's pretty much a shoe-in. Steven's kind of on the fence. And then we go to Ollie and Andy, and those two are just like even harder to lock down. But I love his conversation with Steve. Like, what's that thing above the door? It's a lintel. Like there's just little things I love. It's like, we're getting the band back together, Stevie. He's like, really? He's like, and he's like, yeah. He's like, well, not the real band. We can though if you want to. He's like, no, because you sold my base for drugs.
That's that Edgar Wright stuff.
Yes,
like you know what I mean. Like that kind of like the double entendre. Oh, that's not what I meant. This is what I really meant, kind of thing. Like that's what I really associate with Edgar Wright, and I don't think there's a lot of like great ones in this movie, but there are some fantastic ones in this opening sort of like 40 minutes of the movie before you get to the science fiction elements. I do want to, like, when we get to, because we get to Martin Freeman's character next, we get a quick cameo from Rafe Spall, the other Andy.
You're a big cop.
By the way, dude,
small town, fuck up the model village.
Dude, son of Timothy Spall, who I guess I just never connected it. He plays Wormtail. He plays Wormtail in the Harry Potter movies. It's kind of like
okay. No shit, I had no idea.
So
he's a Nepo baby. Got it. No, I'm just kidding.
Pretty much. But I love that, like, both of like one of the Andys is like one of the main characters in this movie, which is so funny. Yeah, and I always like seeing Rafe Spall pop up and stuff. And they have to have, because he's in the first two, you've got to have Rafe Spall. Oh yeah.
But and there's something too about like Gary King that, like, his style of dress, who this guy like reminds me of, and like not Gary as a person, but what he dresses to and what he listens to and stuff reminds me of Dean. Like the Sisters of Mercy shirt and like the Doc Martens, and like all he needs is a pewter hair tie and like a Highlander sword, and like
I was gonna say missing the fucking ponytail.
And we love Dean, like, but and he's definitely not the piece of shit that Gary King is, but there's something about that. I think they're kind of similar, of like similar ages and stuff. I think he's younger, but that was one of the things that
we're talking about. Dean from LSG Media, by the way. Yeah. I just want to make that sort of like.
Yeah, who is this Dean guy they're talking about?
Not Dean Winchester.
Yeah, not Dean Domino from New Vegas. No, the Dean who introduced us, actually. But the thing that I like is, as it goes on, it gets continually hard to pin everybody down, to the point that Ollie, oh man, he's like, Andy's going drinking with you, and he's like, yes. He goes, Andy Knightley. Like, he says his last name because he's like, I know that it would be some other Andy. It wouldn't be that the Andy, it would be a Andy, and like just that he has to lock in Simon Pegg like that. And we eventually do get to Andy. Andy refuses. He's
a lawyer.
Yeah, corporate lawyer. And I love the fact that his charm, because they were best friends, Andy knows all the tricks, he knows all the lines, and it just doesn't work on him anymore. To the point that he just straight up asks him to leave the office. And we get a little bit of like foreshadowing why he's so sensitive about Gary bringing up his wife and kids and stuff.
I mean, is it a door? It doesn't have a lintel.
Yeah, that was funny. I hated the wind door joke, but the lintel, is it a door? Because it doesn't have a lintel. That did make me laugh out loud. But that was like it was immediately followed by the wind door joke, and I was like, get the fuck out of here, man. He gives him some.
It's like we're going too hard.
Yeah, he gives him some kind of random $600. We don't know what it's for, and he tells him that his mom passed away. And he lays the guilt mayo on hard on the sandwich. It's saying that's why I wanted to get the boys back. She always liked you a lot. Blah 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 blah. And eventually I love the fact that Andy doesn't go, okay, I'll go, Gary. Like, it just shows it shows Andy at the train station. One of the little touches that I love is that when Gary shows up, they're like, you're an hour late. You're supposed to be here at 3. It's almost 4. And he goes, okay, yeah, whatever. This is the beast. And when he loads the car up and goes, let's get this antique on the road show, it goes 1, dong, dong. And it shows each one of their faces, meaning it's 4 o'clock. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, because they're like, it's almost 4. You showed up an hour late. And when it shows Patty Considine's face, Nick Frost, Eddie Marson, and then Martin Freeman. And it's each one of them. It has like the dong of the clock behind them as it cuts to their face. And I was like, oh, they just said it. Yeah, because they just said it's 4 o'clock. And it's like, I know that's such a small detail, but that's why I love Edgar Wright, because he nails those kind of little moments in these movies that you're not really, who the fuck is paying attention to that? It's such a small detail. Are you looking it up?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to. It's fine. It's fine.
I just think I'm not saying it's a great joke. I'm just saying that like it's buried so deep in there that I was like, oh, that's funny. Like that's a funny.
You know when Michael Bay explodes cars and shit, like, and I'm just like, oh, you're fucking. There's no one who does it like Michael Bay. That's what you're doing right now with Edgar Wright.
It's a joke. It's a joke layered so deep that it's like right in front of your face and you don't even notice it. And it's like, motherfucker, I love that. Like,
is it a joke?
I wouldn't say
it's not a joke. It's just like
what would you call it then? Like, I don't know what you would call that.
Just a visual cue, maybe.
But I feel it's a visual cue that has like, it's not random. There's a reason it's there, and that's why I think I love it. It's like it is a joke because it's cutting to each one of their faces.
Like this, yeah. I mean, there's definitely some thought like put behind it, and it didn't need to be there, but it is, which separates. Kind of like a journeyman director between and Edgar Wright, right? Like that's why you get
we see he finally comes to pick him up in the Beast. I love he's like it's basically the same car, new brakes, new manifold, new exhaust, new windows, new brake lights, a whole new engine basically. They end up hitting the road. One of the saddest parts is he's like, hey, I put this song, I'm free to do what I want. And he's like, oh, I put this on a tape for you. And he's like, yeah, this is it. And he's like, this is the tape? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I made this on a tape for you in like 1989. And he's like, yeah, this is it. And he's like, where was it? I was in the tape player. And you're like, and you see Patty Considine like,
okay.
They split off. They find out, they go to like the restrooms and stuff. They take a pit stop. And they
he's playing Need for Speed Underground, dude.
Well, I love when they're all sitting there and they're like, this is a long piss. And Martin Freeman goes, if it is a piss, and he acts like he's snorting cocaine. And Martin or Peter goes, poo. I don't know why he goes poo, and Martin Freeman goes, how is that a poo? I don't know why that makes me laugh so much, but
oh dude, one joke that we did go past was Gary trying to sort of like recruit Martin Freeman into it. I was going to say Martin Sheen. Jesus, that'll be a different movie. But yeah, when he's trying to recruit Martin Freeman into it, and he's just like, "We're going to get back on the horse," and he's like, "What? You're on the horse? You're back on the horse?" What?
Yeah, he's like, "You're back on the horse." He's like, "No, the bike." He's like, "What's that slang for?" Bicycle.
Because it tells you so much about this character, right? I mean, like, and your concerns, the concerns that Martin Freeman's character holds for Gary King, right?
Yeah, that there's you're great, you're back on the horse, you're getting fucked up. He's like, I never got off the horse for one thing. But we kind of see where they are in their lives. They've all started successful businesses, or they're lawyers. Again, we see Gary playing Need for Speed, and they find out that he borrowed 200 quid from each of them to pay Andy, which is fucking hilarious. He's like, that's like robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, right. By the way, my boss used that term like that slang the other day. I was just like, oh shit. Okay. Yeah, robbing Peter to pay Paul.
I gotta admit, I do use that often.
I never understood the O-Man thing.
I guess because they said he had that birthmark at the beginning, and they're like, it was a birthmark that looked like a 6, so we called him O-Man, and I was like, because of the O and the 6? What? I was like, I guess, like
that's what I'm. That was also my thing.
Oliver.
Like,
his name's Oliver, isn't it?
Yeah, but
that's but still, O, is it like O for onion ring? Like what like
is this like a British thing?
It must be, but I mean the simplest explanation is O-Man is short for Oliver, I think. But the birthmark being on his head, I think that's
right. Him connecting it to the birthmark is weird. I'm just like,
yeah, I guess the O and the 6 or something, because he even says it looks like a 6.
And you know, Martin Freeman's pretty much through the entirety of this movie is like, don't call me O-Man. Mm-hmm. It's not that offensive,
right? Yeah, it's not. I mean, yeah, there's nothing really that, like, he says much worse shit in this movie, and I hate that. I don't hate him, but I don't love the WTF Gary, and it's like, come on,
it's so like, that's dated, man. But you know what it is? It's such a. It kind of works for me because he's kind of like this sort of like white collar, sort of like older gentleman now who's just like,
I don't
like
say
dad
that,
joking his way through life kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
He actually says LOL, you know, because he's always tech, you know, he's always on the Bluetooth thing.
Right.
One thing that I listened to a little bit of the commentary that Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright did for this, and they said if you look at Martin Freeman's Bluetooth earpiece, that after he gets assimilated, like he gets taken when he goes to the bathroom in that pub, and even though
it's red,
do what?
No, I was gonna say it's like a different color.
No, it's still blue. But the thing is, like, if there's no connection, the network's down. The Bluetooth shouldn't connect. There's no cell phones, and his thing still flicks. It still beeps, and it's like it has a connection, but it's not. There's no phone for it to be connected to. Like, it's disconnected and stuff. So it's him being connected to like the network, which I didn't pick up on, but apparently that's straight from Edgar Wright. And I was like, oh, fuck it, okay, cool, if you say so, man.
Okay, maybe.
But he. Again, we find out that he took 200 from each of them to pay Andy. I love that's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. No, I borrowed from Peter to pay you. I still owe Paul. Like that I love that. And like the charm of Gary just to laugh his way out of that and just be like, yeah, I don't care. You know, we're having fun. Simon Pegg did say something about Gary King that I loved. He goes, he doesn't care about the journey. All he cares about is the destination. Like, he doesn't care about the fact that, like, all he wants is his friends to get there. And when he gets there, he's still not satisfied, because it's not about spending time with him in whatever capacity. It's about what they're doing, you know? And he's like, he's not having fun because he's not appreciating the journey with these people. And I'm like, yeah, he just wants, his whole thing is not, I want to hang out with you guys. I want to complete the Golden Mile, you know, and eventually he's doing it by himself. I think that's one of the biggest things about Gary too, is that by the end of this movie, he's like a one-man army just trying to get the Golden Mile done. I'm like, that is fucking sad. Like, that is really fucking sad. But they get pulled over. He says the car has always been the Pete has always been registered in Car's name. The car has always been registered in Pete's name. Where do you think all those points came from on your license?
This is the second worst thing that he does, in my opinion. To you know, like that we kind of set up here in this first 40 minutes.
Yeah.
After the pretending that his mother died. But yeah, this is
pretty awful,
dude. This is like. Yeah, I definitely want to say that I know people like this, and I'm sure that there are.
But this is pretty
some people,
like malicious fraud for decades.
Dude, this is like holy shit, dude.
Yeah,
like
that's a lot of like what do you say? Where do you think all those points came from on your license? I have points on my license, like.
But this is what I'm saying. I think this is where it tips too far. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we've done too many things. We've desecrated this character enough that it doesn't bounce back enough to make him be a good guy by the end of the movie, or like, you know, likable by the end of the movie, or me being invested enough to care about his journey by the end of the movie.
And I'm not entirely convinced you're supposed to. I don't think Gary is like.
Actually, you know what? As I was saying that sentence, I'm just like, damn, like maybe
you can relate to elements of him, but not the whole, you know?
Right, exactly. And but I don't know. Like I said, I give Edgar Wright all the credit in the world because I know that he is smart enough to execute a movie and a script on all kinds of levels, but like I don't know whether we're supposed to like this character or not. And
headbutted my mic. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Whether or not it has the intended effect or not, I still feel like I can't connect with his character or his journey at all. And that kind of like, dude, when we're like fucking like racing to get to the world's end at the end, I'm just like, I don't give a fucking shit, dude. Yeah. I don't care if you get there or not.
But I mean, I love their thing at the end. You know, I love the whole breakdown and everything finally comes to light. Like, I love that. But it's like, dude, like, we've gone through 12 pubs. Like, some of these could have been like, and you know, the first post, like some of them go by really quick, you know, when that Doors song, the show me the way to and they literally drink a beer, turn around and walk out. And I was like, but you had to, like, just to keep this movie under 2 hours, like you had to do that. And like, the fact that they cut out some pubs like almost whole, but then at the end we have room for this whole, well, hang on. And I'm like, no, dude. Like, when Nick Frost comes out and he starts like, what gives you the right to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude, you're just saying the same thing that Simon Pegg did literally like 10 minutes ago. Like, you're saying the exact same thing. And I like what you're saying, but maybe you can like, and it's okay for you to reiterate what Gary is saying, because if Gary has somebody agreeing with him, then he's right. You know, like, that's the thing, is Gary is such a fuck up that, like, yeah, that's because I've seen some people be like, Gary is a fuck up and decided the fate of the world for everybody. And I'm like, I don't think that that's a very honest take on it, though, because like the network had to replace everyone in this town, everyone. And then not only is it Gary at the end who's like, fuck you, it's Steven and Gary and Andy, you know, because they're like, we're the human race and we fuck up and we don't want to become, you know, not marginalized, like gentrified and stuff. We don't want to become just this bland of beige. And I like that a lot. So I don't think it's honest a lot to see, like, because I've seen some people kind of say, yeah, like, you know, Gary does not change as a person. I agree with that. But I also don't think that you can really pin, like, you know, because he wouldn't change, he doomed the whole world. It's like, I don't think that's a very fair way to look at, A, you didn't know the world was going to end. And B, if the network had to replace 90%, 99% of the other people in this town, it wasn't just Gary who was the problem. You know, like, I like that. I like the fact that, in the face of the whole, Gary was not the one who wouldn't do it. He was actually part of the populace who's like, no, I'm not being reduced to, you know, being a robot. Like, I like that a lot from Gary, because like, there's very few moments in this movie that like he has the general populace on his side, you know, like he's always running against the wind. And I like the fact that it's like this whole town refused to do it. Like, I think that's cool. But we finally get into town. I love the Julia Deakin cameo. The woman in the Airbnb, again, she's Marsha from Spaced. Please watch Spaced if you haven't. It's so fucking funny. Hello, Brian. It's so fucking good. Gary still has the map from the original pub crawl, which is fucking like, again, one of those things. I love those moments. Sad, yes, it's sad, but I think one of those. I love when he's just holding it, and you could see his mouth is going, "No need," but there's no sound. It's just music. I do love moments like that because it's like that tells us all we need to know about Gary. You know, it's show don't tell. Like I fucking love that. They go to the first pub. They talk about how everything's become starbucked. You know, they rob any little towns with their individuality. And we find out that Andy's not drinking. He's like, I haven't had a drink in 16 years. Blah blah blah. And
what we do before we do get to that, when they're walking through sort of like the town. What's the name of the town again? Sorry?
Newton Haven.
Newton Haven, yes. When they're walking through Newton Haven, they kind of like encounter a group that's pretty much like identical to them, like years ago. And I couldn't help but think of Shaun of the Dead when they kind of like meet their sort of like alternative versions.
Oh yeah, Martin Freeman's in that. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
The first pub that they go to when we see that Andy's not drinking, this whole thing that again Gary is relentless. He's like, do you seriously have a problem with me not drinking? He's like, I don't, but King Arthur does. And Martin Freeman goes, this will be good. Like you just know that there's this shitstorm of bullshit reasoning coming, and like we all know somebody like that who is just like we personally know someone who's like that. Like it is impossible to wrestle this person down, you know, and it was like always a rebuttal. They were always going to be the thumb in the room. Like this person was always going to stick out. And it's like, dude, can you not just can we not hit consensus just once? It was always this person was the outlier or the what do you call them? The contrarian, you know?
Yeah.
And I do kind of like that about Gary because in his mind, you know, it totally makes sense. But before we get into everything here at the first pub, I know we're only like 20 minutes in, but I got to take a piss. So we're going to jump off here and drain our main veins before we run this whole golden mile. And we will be right back with the second half of our coverage of World's End. What would King Arthur think of this? As we jump back into this episode of The World's End, Gary asks Andy at the first post, you know, what would King Arthur? And I just again, it's impossible to fucking like pin him down because he, in some mental gymnastics way, ends up coming to like making weird like somehow sense, but not really. Like I love it. He's like, they wouldn't come back from battle and drink water; they would drink mead, the something of beers and something like that. But I love the fact that it's just Andy sticking to his guns, though. And again, the foreshadowing, it's, you know, it takes balls is walking into a pub and ordering, you know, a water in front of all these big greasy bastards. And then that's what happens at the end of the movie. And it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I do like that foreshadowing. And the little jokes of, he's like, yeah, you know, Exodus Boo by a Bear. It was from that play. And he's like, A Winter's Tale. And he's like, yeah, what was it called? A Winter's Tale. A Winter's Tale.
I like that a lot. Just the fucking Let's Boo Boo does not work for me. Like
I literally, anytime when Lindsay and I leave, it's like, let's boo boo. Yeah.
You don't.
Let's boo boo. She knows exactly what I mean. Like, let's boo boo. I think that's so fucking funny. Let's boo boo.
Kill me, dude.
Or the where he talks about like he might have kids, and he's like, I might have kids. He's like, you remember so and so, that girl I fucked? It's
like why are you being subtle when you say the word?
That, and when he's like, your mom died, you know, the big cancer.
That shit's good.
Yes, the subversion is so like Cornetto trilogy. I love that. And they get the fuck out. They go to the next pub. It's basically the same goddamn thing. Tell him Gary King's back in town. Who's he? Like, I fucking love that
Holy
bartender.
Shit, dude. Like, can you imagine having that big of an ego and just being like, have you heard the news? Gary King's back in town. And you just like not like being so oblivious to the fact that people have moved on with their fucking lives. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just can you imagine like, okay.
The guy who peaked in high school.
No, dude, totally. This is like the equivalent of me going back to my the cinema I used to work at as a 16-year-old, right?
Right.
And like I'm not even like, I don't think this is like rose tinted glasses or anything, but me and like two of our other friends like kind of like ran that fucking place for a little bit, like because management was so inefficient. That'd be like me and like my two mates going back and being like, fucking, we're back in town.
Uh-huh.
Who, like, let's go. Let's walk into the management office and see what's going on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Not a single person is still there, from your time. Like,
not a single person still there. They're still hiring 16-year-olds because they can't afford to pay people who turn older. It's just like, and expecting that they will treat you the exact same like royalty.
And yours has been, what, maybe 10 years since you've worked here? Let's say 10, 12?
Yeah, I'd say so. I left in 2015, so
9 years,
almost 10 years. Yeah.
So Gary's was 25 years ago.
That's
that's fucking crazy, man. And
that's fucking mental, dude.
Yes, it's the delusion of the delusions of grandeur, which is great. They sit down, they ask Gary about his mom's funeral. Really very sad. He because I love when Pete's like, he's like, well, how was the funeral, Gary? And he's just kind of like, huh? Well, he kind of doesn't really understand what he's saying. We get the introduction of Rosamund Pike, who is just, good God, man. She is just, the
it won't be until 2 years later that she'll be really recognized as holy shit, who the fuck is this, right? Because
is that Gone Girl?
Was Gone Girl was the big. I mean, she was big before Gone Girl.
She's a Bond girl, right?
Yeah, Die Another Day. It's unfortunately the worst one, but she is one of the best parts of that movie. That's when I honestly, dude, I watched Die Another Day. I don't think we'll never get a chance to talk about Die Another Day because we'll never cover it. But I watched Die Another Day with my dad when I was 7 years old in the movie theater, and I had a sexual awakening when I saw Rosamund Pike on screen, dude.
Jesus,
I was
fatalistic beauty, man.
Dude, I was like, who is that? And this is a movie starring Halle Berry wearing a skimpy bikini, and I want the fucking white girl, dude.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, and I who also likes her is Steve, because I love when there's talked about him being in that play. They're like, that's right, you were in that play in 7th grade, and she had fishneck stockings. You got a big boner on stage. And he's like, yeah, but she always had a massive white on for Adrian Kane. And I love Martin Freeman. Can we not?
White on.
I love Martin Freeman. He goes, can we not? And he looks at both of them and he goes, talk about my sister in relations to Steven's penis or massive white-ons.
I love that. I love that reveal that she is because it's in that line of dialogue.
Is she fit?
That you get to that you find out is that she's related to him.
Yeah. And the rivalry over her with Steve and Gary, I like that. I like them showing that a little bit more. But they find out she's coming into town. She's hanging out, I guess, with the twins. I love Gary immediately assuming they're going to have sex in the disabled again. And because there's a brilliant, genuine moment of, she's like, what happened to you, Gary? And he's like, oh, well, we got lost a little bit on Bob. She's like, no, what happened to you? He's like, nothing. I'm still the same old Gary. And she's like, no shit. And he's like, so do you want it? That makes me fucking laugh out loud every time. He's like, so do you want it? I don't know. God, that's so good. It's
him walking into the bathroom after is so cringe, dude.
It's, I mean, again, I understand where you're coming from, dude, but at the same time, that was 25 years ago.
That's as cringe as cringe can get.
It's the guy who peaked in high school, and it's normally I fucking hate
it's
those.
the jock, right? It's fucking Doyle rules.
Yeah.
It's the same shit.
And it's people like that who I saw it a lot with chorus kids because I did chorus and theater stuff, and they were kids who were a big fish in a small pond. And
sorry, let's stop right there. Can we rewind? So were you in band and you were just like,
it's called.
Is that you?
It was called Performers Chorus. Thank you very much. No,
shit.
It was actually the highest one that they did there. We wore tuxes and we went to Opryland and we went to the Capitol and sang and stuff, and we sang at a couple of teachers funerals and stuff like that. I did it only for a year because they were all just pretentious fucks, and I couldn't handle any of those people anymore. But back to my point, they were all kind of small fish in a big pond, or big fish in a small pond. And then American Idol would roll around. Everybody tried out and nobody made it. And one guy from my hometown actually went two people from my hometown went pretty far in American Idol, top 3, top 10 in different seasons and stuff, which is pretty cool. But those are except with the exception of that guy, it's those kind of people who peaked in high school and still think they're this like talented, like whatever kind of person. And it's like, man, you're just like me. I was in a band for a long time, and that was in like 2012, 2011. And some guys who started 10 years before I even did, like they were in a band in like 2002 in their 20s, and they're still playing, trying to break through. And it's like, if it's a hobby, that's great, keep doing it. But it's like, don't try to put like, like I'm a rock god. And it's like, no, you're not. Yeah. Like you had to take 2 blood thinners just to get up on the stage.
is that your, so what would you consider to be your peaked in life moment where you're just like, holy shit, like this is, I
haven't even begun to peak.
No, just in terms of like, I'm with other people and I am doing the best that I could possibly do in my life at the moment, and this is what I will remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as like in youth, I would say probably like hanging out with the group that I still hang out. We went to a Halo tournament in Atlanta like a week or 2 ago, and it's still like, we don't hang out and do as much stuff as we used to. Christ, obviously,
it's so good that you're married already. It's like, I was
she came with
listening to that sentence, and I'm like, God damn it, you found the one, dude.
Yeah,
the one.
Yeah, she came with. She was like, yeah, I'll check it out. But no, I would say probably not peaked it, but like in terms of like the closest thing I could say to doing something like the Golden Mile, we did it at our friend Spencer's house on the weekend. For like, right. We would go and play hide and go seek or go into town and stuff like that. Like it was a lot of fun. But yes, no, peak. I haven't even begun to peak. You'll know when I've peaked.
No. Oh. The fucking world, just the world implodes.
Yeah. Fucking, I'll drop the dentist system on you. But Sam, she, gives Gary a good pop in the face, and she leaves to go hang out with the twins. I love the out of order sign. I've seen some people like cosplay as him, and they always have the out of order sign with like all the black stuff. Like, that's kind of cool. I like that.
Imagine fucking cosplaying the weakest fucking movie in the franchise.
And this is something too, I feel like something that I started doing a long time ago, because I'm a big I love My Chemical Romance, great band. But the last album they put out,
when I was a young boy,
the album
my father
after that
took me in. Oh, which one's that?
It's called Danger Days, and it is like electronic, and it's like poppy and like spots, and it's fucking out there. And people didn't like it, and I remember listening to it with some friends, and they're like, I don't know, man. And I was like, if this was not My Chemical Romance, would you like this? And I had to be like, yes, I would definitely listen to this. I like this music,
right?
Just because so there is a part of me that does that with World's End, and I go, if this was not Edgar Wright or not part of the Cornetto trilogy, would I like this? And it's like, yes, I absolutely would. I would have had this recommended to me 1,000 times, before seeing it. So in that aspect, but it's also in the same breath, you can't ignore the fact that there's so many connections to the Cornetto trilogy in this, and there's a lot of like a lot of the goodwill and spirit and love for this movie is carried through from the first two. So you can't just sit there and ignore it, but at the same time, as its own separate entity, it's okay. But as part of the trilogy, I think the trilogy makes it a little bit stronger. But it's definitely the weakest leg of that three-legged dog.
Not enough goodwill for me to pay for parking, apparently.
Yeah, apparently not.
Hey man, we were on those Hoyt Cinema paychecks, dude. Like, you had to use those wisely.
I was out there drinking pints like Gary, which I love, going to the famous. And we haven't even talked about like the names of all the characters: Peter Page, Andy Knightley, Gary King. Like, they're all names of like the round table, like King Arthur kind of shit, which I think is cool. It's kind of a throwback to Hot Fuzz. Reacher, Tiller, Preacher, like everybody has like the names like that. And they end up going to this bar. We run into fucking Basil. I love this actor from Harry Potter. I can't remember who does he play? He's like
that's
the henchman.
Fucking August Filch.
That's him, right? He's the one.
He is he's he's the cause of the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones.
Oh, I didn't even know he's in Game of Thrones. I never watched it.
Dude, he is, I'm not even kidding, he doesn't have like the biggest sort of like role to play, but he's instrumental to the biggest event in Game of Thrones, which is wild.
Yeah,
he's so good, dude. That's David Bradley. He's been in a bunch of shit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see him as Matt Basil. We'll find out he's one of the only ones who hasn't been kind of assimilated. And I love the fact that Gary's like, they're like, Gary, maybe you're not such the hero you think you are. And he's like, Gary King, say for yourself, you're bad. And immediately finds out he's still kicked out of this bar from 25 years ago. Again, but I think also a great moment for Gary, showing him that this is when I think that it shows so much more about Gary. Is like, A, it's disgusting to drink somebody's half-drink beer outside. That's absolutely disgusting. But it's the fact that he is doing it alone. That's almost somehow makes it worse for me. It's the fact that like these guys don't even have to be here now.
No one's saying it.
Yeah. Right. And it's like these guys don't even technically have to be here anymore because they didn't drink at this pub. Doesn't that break your rule? You know, you're the only one who drank, but it's like, that's just, it's just so fucking
so gross,
sad. I like when they get to the next pub. Hate the joke of him. He's like, yeah, when you woke up, we told you it was 1991 and you punched a clock. And I was like, and not a great joke. Not my favorite, but I do love the marmalade sandwich. I love when he's like two redhead and two brunettes, and then they look over and there's the trio of women.
You never see them.
Yes,
like you just say that like from behind. Yeah, I
fucking dig it, man. But now it's not them. You know that they were just three blanks that kind of looked like them. And yeah, I think this is where we get the guy. Yeah, the Steve's bully. And he, and I love this character development from Steve, who's like, talks about this bully and stuff. And he's like, Shane Hawkins, that's what his name is. And he was like, it's not even that he made me stay home more than chicken pox. It's not even that he, ruined a large part of my childhood. It's not even that he knocked my eyeball out of place one time. It's just that he looked at me and didn't even recognize who I was when he asked for this empty chair at the table. And I love that, because up until this point, like, Peter has been kind of one of the more quiet. None of these guys seem like they really got bullied. And then Peter comes out and he's like, no, I got horribly bullied. And I love that. What I love even more is when you watch the beginning of this and you see his introduction where they have his little name card. It's Shane Hawkins. He walks up and he does the backpack over the shoulder and hits Pete in the head, and Gary jumps in and shoves him. And it's so quick, you're not paying attention to it, and you don't know that he's bullied. But when you go back and rewatch the beginning of this, you'll see it's Shane Hawkins picking on Peter at the beginning of his like intro thing. And I thought that was just, again, great foreshadowing. And Gary interrupts with some shots, which pisses everybody off. And, he basically, Andy calls him out and he's like, you said you were here to chew the fat, but I think you just want to drink it. And he's like, you know what? I'm calling it a night. I want to go back to London. I want to be done. And that's when all hell breaks loose. Like it's 35 minutes in, by the way, that we're here. And like, I like the fact that it's got a really, really good setup. And when the aliens come in, like, they're a little bit welcomed at first, but then I feel like by the time that this movie is an hour and 50 minutes, and 35 minutes in, the robots show up. And I'm like, I just feel like that's almost too much time. I feel like it's almost too much time for these things to be here. And they're not really a like direct, like, terrifying threat for an hour and 10 minutes. I'm like, really?
No one gives a fuck.
I just
don't care.
And I like the idea of like, if they were scarier, I would be on board. But like, literally at one point they're running to the pub and Nick Frost is like running right past them and just tackling them and shoving them out of the way. And I'm like, just get in a car and fucking run them over. Like what is the big problem here? I don't understand. But the great scene of Gary going to punch that spot in the wall again, realizing him stopping and being like, oh fuck, that's the same.
That's good stuff.
I
like that a lot. That's a real like, holy shit, what is my life amounted to moment.
Back here in the same place doing the exact same things. Right. And I think it's great him razzing the kid and being like, we're doing the Golden Mile. We used to own this town. That is the most cringy thing I think that can come out of somebody's. We used to own this town. It's like, you can have it. It sucks. Well, who would want to own this place?
What do you get from owning this town? Yeah, he was straight up about to fucking assault this kid. Hey, fucking,
yeah. He goes to beat the shit out of old 8 Mile over here with the blonde hair and the hoodie. And I gotta admit, the first time I saw this, it when that kid's head hits the urinal and comes off, I was like, what the fuck? And like, it wasn't like it's not the most insane thing you're going to see in an Edgar Wright movie, but because there had been no lead up until this point like I said, the genre shift is so like quick and sudden. Like, it's just so sudden, and it's just like, what the fuck are we dealing with here now? And you, at this point, as an audience member, you're being asked to make a decision. You need to decide whether you're on board or whether you're not on board with this. And that is incredibly risky from Edgar Wright's point of view. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, you're either with us or you're not on board. And I'm just like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. See, I don't know, because it works for me, but at the same time, I just feel like the genre shift is not what bothers me. It's the application of what it is. Of like, the zombies in Shaun of the Dead feel absolutely terrifying, and like the people in Hot Fuzz, the whole town, it being this conspiracy, is terrifying. But these robots are just like, part of me is like, why don't you just fucking leave? Like, it's not like the entire world has been taken over. Like, Hot Fuzz is kind of the same thing. You could just say, well, just fucking leave. And it's like, well, no, they're murdering people. Like, but this movie, like I like the genre shift, and I like the fact that they're like what Gary's like weird kind of conspiracy is correct, where he's like, that's why no one remembered us, because yada, 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 yada. And it's like, oh, it's like, Gary, you're never wrong, Gary. Like, I do love that. I love the fact that somehow still, even in this fucked up way, like, Gary is right. And I like the fight scenes. I think they're good, but it's one of those things where it's like, I love how these like 5 middle-aged white guys all know like incredible fighting skill. It's one of those things where it's like, it's a like movie.
It's a fantasy thing. I think. I feel like this is like a fantasy wish fulfillment sort of like moment. Whenever it reminds me of like, that movie Sucker Punch. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's kind of like one of those things where those girls who just kind of like end up like sort of imagining that they're better than they are. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe that's my own headcanon sort of like coming into it, but.
Well, I think the shift can work, but I think that I don't know. It's so ambiguous from here on out as to like, well, like what is this movie trying to say? Like, and Gary's ending and the whole world. And I was like, I don't know if the whole world. I know the movie is called The World's End, but it's like, that's not really what I thought was going to be the the linchpin of this. But
maybe the movie is just a piece of shit.
Well, and the thing that I think I ultimately end up liking is like, if it wasn't for the chemistry of the characters and like, I'd say probably 70% of the jokes like landing for me, if it wasn't for a lot of that stuff, it's kind of like, yeah, there's not really like a crazy story here. There's nothing there that really is going to like knock your socks off, like Shaun of the Dead, or like, I think Shaun of the Dead probably has like the best story per se, because it's just about like growing up and, yada, yada. Like Hot Fuzz is different. And this one's just kind of like, I don't know what to think about it. I do know I think that they did a great job of like making Nick Frost an incredible like physical presence, and like picking up that one and doing the Bane and breaking its fucking back and shit. And I was like, I like the fact that they give a lot of like room.
People's elbow. The people's elbow got me. I was just like, is he fucking doing the people's elbow right now, dude?
Yeah, I love that. I think Nick Frost is a really, really strong part of this movie. he's like, I can't believe it. I know, mate. I can't believe you lied about your mom. And he's like, that was a white lie. How is that a white lie? She's not dead, is she? And he just grabs him by the throat. Like, I love the fact that right after all of this, Andy still can't let go that he lied about his it's the first thing he brings up when they get saved. They see that all their cell phones are down. It's the network, which ends up being like the name of the whole conglomerate at the end. Gary says, hey, we should definitely move on to the next pub. They're all saying, like, get the fuck out of London. Like, we shouldn't be here. This is ridiculous. And the whole thing of Andy, that's the only thing that I don't love with Andy's character is like when they're like, oh yeah, we're too drunk to drive back to London. Oh, Andy's not. And Andy pounds 5 shots like back to back to back to back to back. And I was like, okay, but like, I feel like there needs to be a lot more happening to lead up to that. Like if they had showed Andy and it's his wife who's like, I'm filing for divorce on Monday, then yeah, like get a text and it's like, yeah, we're done. This is not happening. It's like, okay, then I believe that. But this guy just fought some robots in a bathroom and all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I'm also going to pound a substantial amount of liquor. And I was like, I don't know. I just don't really I would buy more of it if he was like, Gary's like, all right, don't be mad at me, but I've somehow been slipping you alcohol all night. And Andy's like, what? Like almost like The Hangover, something like that. I could believe more than just him going out there and pounding 5 shots. And it feels like because we can't have a sober person here, this ruins like our idea of why they have to continue with the pub crawl. That's the only time that like I was like, okay, this is getting like a little absurd. Like I can buy some of this. Like we need to keep doing the pub crawl because that's what they're expecting us to do, and then we'll just go home. It's like, okay, cool. Like I believe that, but the whole thing of Andy just smashing 5 shots, like it's a funny take, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if I really buy that from a guy who hasn't had a drink in almost 2 decades. It's like I feel like that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I mean, like it's a good like comedic moment of just like a whole like he's our only sort of like out to get out of here, and then it's just like, well, now we're stuck. But yeah, I also agree with you. I'm just like, why? I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that riveting.
I'm sorry, dude. This movie's just not that deep, and I'm honestly clinging to like a life preserver over here. I'm just like, this is like fucking. I don't know. I don't know. Like this is. Yeah, I don't know. The further we go into this movie, like I said, man, like the first 40 minutes of this are pretty incredible, and then like the further we go into this movie, the more I lose interest. And I'm hoping this. I feel like this is me doing this on the podcast too. I'm so sorry.
Well, don't worry. There's only an hour left.
Oh, great.
No, the thing I do like is that they do chop through like they chop through like a couple of the pubs, and at the next one, that's where we meet the Reverend Green, played by Michael Smiley, who's another actor in Space.
He's a legend.
I love. He also popped up in Shaun of the Dead as this character from Space, but like a zombie version of it. Tires. And the whole thing of him going up and knocking, he's like, "Do you have any drugs?" Is again that subversion I fucking love.
That was great. That was great.
He's like, "I'm gonna go out there and ask him what's going on, and possibly buy some drugs." And he just lets her know like what's going on. Basically, the town is, for lack of a better term, the town has been replaced by robots. It's not that way. I have a proper job. I have a proper office. He's like, you had a proper office. It was in the gentleman's toilet. He's like, well, what does he say? He's like, I don't. He's like, I have a proper business and a proper office. It's like, you had a proper office. It was in the gents' room. He's like, well, anybody can do their business in a gents' room. Like it's a very like quick, like kind of quippy thing. And I think a lot of these people. I think there's a lot of people from Space that pop up in this. The guy who gives them like the definition of robot, the little smarmy asshole who's like one of the only humans left. But the as it goes on, and the Reverend Green ends up getting fucking assimilated as well because he let them know what the story is. It's like, how is that a bad thing? I don't understand that. Like, what's the rules of this? Like, all he said was
he gets a call from the supervisor, but I don't know how that exactly is. I mean, like, because the end game of the robots here is to, make Earth more sort of like susceptible, right? Like to make them sort of like controllable or like whatever. But like, how is these guys sort of like adventure connected to that?
Right. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. It's an interesting question. But what I like is that once they move on from here, the bartender at the next bar is Markeep, who's Brian from Spaced, and they're trying to come up with like the names for the fucking like what to call them, and they're like, "What about Noblots?" He's like, "What about Phobot?" And I love Nick Frost saying like, "No one has said anything here in the last 5 minutes that is better than Smashy Smashy Eggman," and it's, that fucking line always cracks me up, dude. I love it.
Why?
I think it's fucking. I think it's fucking hilarious. Nothing anyone has said in the last 5 minutes is better than Smashy Smashy Eggman. It's so fucking funny.
Just I had the biggest eye roll of that line. That was almost one of the lines that I was just like, I'm turning this off. I'm coming back.
Oh my god!
I'm gonna come back.
Lower your standards. Good God! I think it's like it's not like groundbreaking, but it's like it's silly, you know. And like that's the like it's something where it's like I'm not really.
I know, and I think that's like I said, man. Like I think that's just another.
It's a lot sillier than the first two. Yeah.
No, not even just the first two. The first half hour of this movie, like you know what I mean. Like it's just like wait.
It does because they get drunk. It gets like goofy, you know.
It's like we crashed into the Andes. We were having a nice flight, and we were crashed into the Andes, and now we're about to fucking starve and eat each other. That's what's about to happen.
You know what? I think this movie would be great is if the town had been like instead of robots, it's like vampires. I think that would be something like that would be fantastic. Where it's like, I mean, you're basically making Shaun of the Dead again at that point. But I like Shaun of the Dead, but they're intelligent. I think that would be more interesting than like these like blank robot Lego. Like I do love the line of why don't you get in your rocket ship and fuck off back to Legoland. I think that is hilarious. Like that cracks me up at the end because it's like, yeah, they're just like Legos basically. But Rosamund Pike shows up with the twins. She kind of picks up on the fact that something is going on. She tells the twins outside, and I love them. Like one of them puts her legs on her arms and is rotating, like fighting all three of them. It feels like very. Because this, like some of this stuff was in Hot Fuzz, a little bit was in Shaun of the Dead, but really I feel like Scott Pilgrim is where the choreography like hit this new like ramp up, and like especially this when Steven comes out and like confesses his love for oh god, what is his sister's name? Sam. When he comes out and confesses his love for Sam and they start fighting the twins, it's like that kind of choreography where it's like she catches the pole and slides it into him and then slides down the pole and starts punching her. And it's like, this is fucking, I was not expecting like this much of a physical like action movie in the middle of these like kind of comedic bits, but then like emotional like kind of shit, because like again we've gone through this like thing. Steven confesses his love to Sam, everybody finally knows what's going on, and as they're leaving, like Nick Frost putting his arm through the plate in that door, he's like basically no one else knows what's going on, so fuck it, and he goes to run out the door and he puts his arm through one of the plate. I forever fucking die at that, man. Like I think there's something like the silliness can work in this movie, but I feel like the majority of it comes from someone like naturally like Nick Frost. I think some of these are not naturally comedic, silly kind of people like Patty Considine and Eddie Marston.
Martin Freeman and shit.
Yeah.
Eddie Marston, yeah.
And they can be funny, but at the same time, like so much of this second half relies on that goofy kind of silliness that I think that Nick Frost is like not somebody who's done stand-up comedy and not someone who is a comedian, but he is naturally just a funny motherfucker from everything I've like seen and watched. Like that's basically why he got a job with them to be able to do this stuff. It's like, he's just so funny. We've got to have him. And I think he kills it in a lot of parts of this movie. When he's talking to Markeep and he's like, does it have a fruity yet delicate note that lingers on the tongue? And Markeep goes, oh, you must be a connoisseur. And Nick Frost goes, ah, just this weird, short little like drunk laugh. It fucking cracks me up. But at the Mermaid? Yeah. So we're now at the Mermaid. Steve gets abducted by Mad Basil, who lets him know like what's going on, basically. I love the use of like color when he steals him back into that room, and it's those like blues and oranges and stuff.
Dude, this whole sequence looks absolutely stunning. Like especially because it cuts back to the dance floor where the three guys are just being like sort of like seduced by the marmalade sandwich, essentially, and it looks so good. Like I don't know, it must have been. I don't know, man. Maybe it's a different lens they're using or something. It looks so
it's wide.
crisp.
It's very wide.
Yeah.
It's also a shitload of color. Like this is like the most color that you see in like the whole movie.
Because the hair, the red hair of like the main sort of like, I guess the marmalade is like, it like really pops.
Yeah. And when they're doing like the close-ups on them, as Mad Basil was explaining, like they get your DNA from like the rim of a glass or kissing you or something like that. I love the fact that it's like showing the zoom in on all of their faces, and it's like they're perfect looking. You know, like and I think there must be some kind of great effect in this, because like not only do they capture a shit load of like the crowd, but they get a lot of super detailed like closer shots of the actors and stuff. And Mad Basil lays it down, you know, basically they're integrating us and it's fine unless you say no, then you know you're worm food. But we find out later you get turned into compost. Them making, I think it's funny, like 40-year-old men making out with basically high schoolers, and it's like, and it's not just Gary, it's like Gary does. Yeah, it's three like 45-year-old men who are making out with like probably 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds.
Two of them are married.
Yeah, we have two of which are married. And I love the realization from Rosamund Pike when, you know, that guy that they brought up earlier, Adrian, what I can't remember what the fuck his name is, Adrian Peterson or something like that. What's his name? Adrian Keene. And he's like, oh, she's right over there. And at first you don't really know why she's reacting this way. And she just looks like absolutely mortified and runs out. And she's like, he has been dead for 8 years. Like he died in a motorcycle wreck in Italy. Like,
it's a nice little like, let's explain why she's doing this a little later. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's hold off on this for now.
That's actually
it's good,
one of the
writing. I like it.
I like it because it's one of the scariest moments to me of this whole movie. Is like, imagine like somebody you knew that died almost a decade ago walking up and being like, hey, what's up, dude? And it's like, man, I don't know what, I would probably lose my fucking mind. You'd be like, what? Like I would hard reset if I saw that.
It's like if my spirit was to walk into this room, because my spirit's been fucking crushed by this movie, dude. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Am I kidding?
I don't care. I'll drag you through this movie. You drag me through fucking Transformers. I don't give a fuck.
Hey man, Transformers, that's a fucking life.
Oh God. But as they finally get dragged out of this bar, and you start to kind of realize that Oliver has been taken over because he's too clean, he's too polite.
Perfect.
He's like crisp.
Yeah, well, that's it. He's too polite and he's too keen to keep going.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not like the complaining has stopped now. You know, like all of this, like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Like, I'm being conservative. All of that is gone. It's out the window, and now has been sort of like replaced. And like, is he dead? I don't remember.
I'm sorry, which one?
He's a compost, right?
Oh yeah,
Oliver, the real,
they get turned into supposedly they get turned into compost. I guess the
so dark, dude.
Yeah, the organics. But the line that that always cracks me and Lindsay up is they're like, they learned everything about us. Like they knew that three girls in schoolgirl outfits would tempt these two. And I love Gary King. He's like, who wouldn't, right? And it's Peter goes, fuck yeah. And
dude,
so
I had a great time with that, dude. It was so good. What a fantastic like progression of his character.
Yeah, but it's great because like I feel like when they kind of start giving up to that silliness is when Peter, because he looks like a drunk little kid for the next hour of the movie. He's always like, so what's going on? They blanks. And he's such a sweet little man. It's like when Peter dies, that honestly did piss me off. Like, because I like his character so much. He is like probably the funniest out of the bunch to me. That it really bums me out when Peter gets like assimilated later on. We go into the beehive. We see Guy, Mr. I can't remember what they call it, Mr. Pearson. I can't remember. Played by the immaculate Timothy Dalton. No, I'm just kidding. Pierce Brosnan. Finally
some class in this movie.
But he kind of breaks it down for him. He's like, it's not about shirts versus skins. It's not about us versus them. They think we have potential and they want to take us down for the ride. And that's when Andy finally realizes that Ollie is not a biologic anymore because of the birthmark on the top of his head. And the whole place like breaking out into this like crazy shit. And I love Rosamund Pike going up and kicking her own brother. It's like some of the only action she has in the whole movie. And I love her just like, kicking the fuck out of this Blink. But I think one thing the movie does like suffer from a little bit is like, I'd say probably 56 minutes, we have the fight with the twins, which is, okay, cool. Like it's not bad. It's a small fight. And then we're 10 minutes later and we're about to have like an all out brawl, which is, don't get me wrong. I think this looks great. I love seeing Nick Frost get like physical, but we had the fight in the bathroom. Then we had the fight with the twins. And now we're having a fight with all these, and it's only going to escalate too, as like the whole town starts like looking for them. And I'm a fan of like physical action as much as the next guy. But I think that Nick Frost freaking out and grabbing those bar stools like punching, like boxing gloves, I think is fucking great. But the fact is, like, this is the third time we've seen him, like second or third time we've seen him do it. I would love if like there were little action spots that didn't necessarily have him like unleashed like this. Like this would mean a lot more if he hadn't already done it twice before this. I think seeing Nick Frost kick a bunch of robots to death in a pub is actually pretty fucking entertaining. But the crazy part is that it's like, but we've already done this like twice. And I don't like it doesn't mean nearly as much anymore because I've seen this in the last two times in the last 20 minutes, but the fight kind of commences. They go, back and forth. I do love Gary constantly trying to get the pint down. I think that's probably the best part of the whole thing is him trying to get that drink and he won't give up on it. But just they go through this fight and it's not terribly long. It's only a few minutes, but I feel like it stops just as soon as it starts because, Pierce Brosnan walks back in and lays it down. He's like, this is pretty fucking pointless. Like we let's not do this because this is only going to end one way. Like, let's just, let's be civil about it. The whole thing with Gary, like letting Sam go and it's their only fucking ride out of town. And he just like lets her fucking leave. They go to the beehive. They all prove that they're humans, which I love. When Steve has to pull his pants down because he has that burn mark on his ass cheek and Gary's like, oh, very nice, Steven. The whole thing of King Gay, he's like, then how do I know on that beam it says King Gary? He goes, it doesn't. It says King Gay. It's like King Gay, and it's oh god, I get their fucking names confused. It's Steven, who's like, I scratched out the R. Like that fucking part cracks me up. I love that shit. But the whole thing of them like showing their scars and Peter lifts his pant leg up and his doesn't, like he doesn't have the scar and they all go, what the fuck? And he's like, oh, sorry, wrong leg. That made me laugh.
He's such a sweetheart. Like that was just like, he's like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was fantastic.
And we find out kind of the last half of the story with Gandy and Harry with Gary and Andy, where basically in like 1997, I guess Gary overdosed and Andy drove him to the hospital, but got in this horrible wreck. And miraculously, Gary survived and ran off and left him. And Andy had to have 12-hour like life-saving surgery, only to go to jail like immediately afterwards.
Piece of shit, dude.
Yeah, I can see why. Like it wouldn't surprise me at all to find out it's like, oh, Andy and Gary have not spoken since that happened. Like it almost feels that way. Like I feel like maybe they have once or twice, but I like the fact that you could almost believe that they haven't spoken to each other since 1997. And we get the first inkling that something's going on. Like Gary is hiding something else where he won't show them like his arm, with the scar on his elbow. And I like the fact that there's building up to what kind of gets revealed at the end of the movie. But the beehive gets raided anyways. Peter dies killing Shane, which I love. Shane Hawkins. I hate that Peter dies, but I love that he dies beating the shit out of his like bully's clone. Gary gets knocked out by Andy, and he's like, "Calm down, dude." He's like, "Listen, you have been drinking," and he just pummels Gary in the face and knocks him out. But they still end up going, because I love they're like, okay, we got to get to the car. The car is here. And they look across the street and they have to go through the pub. He's like, God damn it. Like that I think that is great. I think that being like, it's almost inevitable. Yes, I love that. Did you catch the, above the pub? I think it's called the King's Head. If you look at the portrait, that is Simon Pegg. Like that's Simon Pegg's face. And I love that it's the King's Head, like Gary King. But they finally go into the pub. They see.
Oh yeah, I see it now. That's so funny.
I like
it's kind of like it looks like something like an old magistrate would wear.
Looks like Brian May from Queen. Gary almost like kind of resigns. Again, I love the subterfuge here of Gary being like, so close, man. And he just drinks the pint and he marks it off the Golden Mile. It's like, well, we got one more done. Like that's all in a good day's fun. And then he throws his car keys and runs. I'm like, God, dude, I love his just like to the bitter fucking end. Like I am to the bitter end. I'm not giving up on this thing. It's like I hate it, like watching as a character, but I also kind of love it because it's just like the guy. If you had dedicated yourself to this much anything in your life to be productive, you would be owning the business you started at from the ground floor.
The fucking president,
right? But it's like if you can just turn that relentlessness into something productive, you'll be on style. Gary would be a great salesman if he could get his shit together. That guy could sell fucking that guy could sell fucking water to the sea. Like he has such a great like relentlessness. But he ends up running for the next pub. And again, this is one of the things I don't love because he just runs straight through the zombies or the blanks. He just chucks and drives, grabs an arm, knocks a head off, keeps running. I love the visual of all of them with the lights on their head. I think that looks fucking incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Love that.
Sick.
I think that looks absolutely fantastic. But there's just so like that is one thing I think objectively, even me who's like a staunch defender of this movie, and it's not that it's a bad movie. It's just that there's not compared to the first two. And then even on its own, the second half is kind of like it. Even the first time I watched this, when they get to the World's End and he starts yelling with the network or whatever, I was like, okay, dude, like we're monologuing on top of monologuing on top of monologuing. This is dragging out a little bit. But the scene of them running in and all of the lights behind him, I absolutely love. And Gary making Andy fight all of the blanks at the door while he drinks a pint. It's just like, there's times where it's like, you're surprised, but then like, wait, why am I surprised? This guy's a total piece of shit. But it's like I feel like his depravity always hits like a new low. You weren't really like, really, you're just going to sit there and drink beer while your friend like fights these things to death. And Steven crashes in with Beast, tells him, we got to get the fuck out of there. And you think that's the end for Steven because he gets dragged out by the modern art, the big like metal fucking thing. Gary takes off for the World's End, and this is a good time too to like when he gets to the World's End and you see the little number 12 in front of the pint. Did you ever wonder like what that's about? Because I know it's 12 pubs, but none of the other ones are numbered. It's like, why does this one have a 12 in front of it? Like,
I just thought it was like something like a meta. Yeah, kind of like a meta thing.
There is like if you look in there's 12 pubs, and if you look in every pub at some point there's like a number 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 in the background of the shot. There's always the number that kind of tells you where you're at, even to the point that at the very end and like the apocalypse with Gary and like the acolytes and stuff, there's a number 13 in the top right hand corner when they go into the bar. It's like, oh, that's pretty fucking cool. I like that. and I get like one of my favorite like moments between them as they all kind of like escape and get to the world's end. And he says, you were Gary fucking King. I would have followed you to the end of the world. I have followed you all the way to the end. And Gary just saying, then stop fucking following me, and it's like it's so fucked up to like him to drag all of these people here under false pretenses. Then when they show up and they're like, no, we actually do care for you. We don't want you to drink. He's like, I don't give a shit. Stop fucking following me. If you're not going to enable me, I don't want anything to do with you. Like I that's so like, even for me, who's like, can relate to Gary a little bit. It's just like, that is like a whole other low, man. Like, it's like, even every time I don't think he can go any lower, somehow he does. And it's like, it's weird to see Simon Pegg play somebody who's that pathetic. Like, he doesn't usually play, like maybe Huey's dad and the boys, who's kind of like a little bit of a coward, like that's about it. But he's always like a cool person or like the lovable, like deadbeat or something like that. But to see him play like such a pathetic character is like startling at times. I'm like, God, this guy just keeps sinking, man. But they get into an altercation. We finally see Gary's scars on his wrist, which I fucking that broke me the first time I saw it. I was like, God, man, this is really starting to hit. Like, I did not expect the movie to go to this level of Gary has been suicidal and has been in a mental hospital, and it's like, okay, yeah, I guess that kind of explains a lot. I did see someone on Reddit. I was just reading like people's thoughts and kind of comments and stuff. And one of the things they pointed out was like, everybody brings luggage but Gary. And it's like, because Gary is not coming back. Like, he was probably going to kill himself after the Golden Mile. And I was like, oh shit. Well, yeah, I guess I didn't really think about that. Like, he packs nothing because he knows. Else. Yeah. Nothing else is going to go on.
Man, I saw this and I want to care. I want to feel something. It's just there's fucking robot aliens outside the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm genuinely so frustrated that I don't feel anything at this point of the movie, because I'm just like, I know shit you're supposed to, and okay, like, here's something that I didn't say at the start of this episode. I really wanted to like this movie. I really, really did. And every time I sit down and rewatch it, I really do want to re-engage with it and really want to, like, I really hope that it reconnects with me or sparks something in me. But like, it just, fuck, man. Like, there's there's an issue with tone in this movie, and I can't move past it.
No, I think that's definitely kind of like, it's definitely understandable, because it's one of those, like, if the humor is not up your alley, like if you're not down for like silly kind of like goofy things to come, because we're all, 60 pints in now or whatever. And if the kind of the genericness of the enemy is what's kind of like, really, like the zombies were terrifying. Like the whole the NWA from Hot Fuzz was like, those were great, like geriatric murderers, and I was like, they have like character. But this one is just kind of like, it does kind of feel just like blocky sci-fi people. Like, it has super weak like antagonists, but this part I absolutely like. If you feel nothing from this, then you're an emotional bastard, and I feel sorry.
I guess I am. I guess I am, because it's fucking robot. Dude, by the way, just real quick, I just realized what every character, the main guys in this movie are doing. You know what they're doing? They're doing the Boggs thing.
The what? Oh, the Wade Boggs thing.
Yeah, they're doing the Boggs thing, baby.
That's fucking hilarious. Mark 1 on everybody's shirt. But the part where Gary gives it to Nick, and he's like, you have stuff worth fighting for. You have a family. This is all I've got. It's like, Jesus Christ. Like, I love that. And Gary telling them, like, they told me when to go to bed. And like, that's how his fucking ego, like how inflated his ego is. And it's like, God knows what Gary did to like merit him having to go to this place. If this is how he acts in day-to-day life, imagine what he did that was bad enough to land him in this place where he's like suicidal and in a psych ward and stuff. And really the last, because we're about an hour and a half when we get down to the bottom of the world's end, and we're down there. Like, we understand now that they're going to like replace Gary and Andy, and they're going to replace them with younger clones of themselves, and they'll kind of carry on, as who they are, and yada yada yada. What happens when there's a Gary King who's 19 and has been alive for 180 years? Do these things age? Like, because there's 16-year-olds running around who should be like 40, and it's like, that's what I don't understand. Is like, what is the grand plan here to like, what is the subterfuge?
Like the plot holes. This movie's got bigger plot holes than I do have in my underwear, dude. Like, it's fucking crazy.
Well, it's so weird.
By
to
the way,
see
I gotta get new underwear.
It's so weird to see how tight Hot Fuzz is with so many. Like, I love when Nick is
baffling.
Yeah. Well, when Simon Pegg is running in the morning and he sees the two tow truck twins, and you're like, oh, they're just towing a car. No, they're towing fucking Danny's car from the night before. And it's like, God, that's so like, it's a joke, but then a joke kind of thing.
I'm a slasher.
Yeah.
What? I'm a slasher of prices.
I feel like this like there's a part of that. There's a part of that humor that has lived on in this, but at this part where we start talking to like the network directly, and it's an hour, like we're down here at like an hour and a half, and it takes probably to an hour and 35 minutes to get the fuck out of this basement, and they just keep talking to this thing. And the thing that ultimately does kind of kill me is like, I appreciate the relentlessness of Gary, and I like that as this character of like kind of abominable and unstoppable. But at the same time, it's like, if the network thinks so little of Gary as he is, like, why do they let him of all people talk them out of populating this whole planet and shit? And it's like, it's a little bit like unbelievable. Like, if the network just pulled up roots and just destroyed Newton Haven and left, that I would find, okay, yeah, their experiment failed. But the fact that they like damn the entire world to this like Mad Max like shit is like, that's kind of weird. Like, I don't really think I don't need the post-apocalyptic part of this movie. I really don't. Like, I would love if Gary, it showed Gary 3 months later and he's got a job and is clean shaven and looks better and is not dyeing his hair jet black anymore. Like, I would love to see something like that. But like, this whole ending of being like a post-apocalyptic kind of draw, just, I don't know, it doesn't really work for me, because for one thing, this movie is almost 2 hours long, and we've been introduced to the antagonist at the 35-minute mark, and it's like, I don't know, man, I just don't really need this whole ending of Nick Frost like explaining to people like what happened and stuff. And it's kind of funny, like there's some funny goofs and stuff, but I don't understand like why this is all there. But I do love that Steven and Sam got together. That part always makes me like, hell yeah. And like, the funny thing is, like, the blank replacements are almost like Peter's blank replacement is a better dad, and like he's actually talking to his kids and stuff like that. Like, overall, I think this movie I think it's definitely a hit for me, obviously, but it's just because like there's humor in it that I love, and I love the heart and like the characters. And I know it's kind of got like a muddled kind of like, what is this movie actually trying to say? Is it saying that you can grow up too much and don't become distant? Or is it saying don't live in the past and be this like nostalgic person all the time? Like I do feel like one of the things that a quote that Gary King would love is Andy from The Office, when he's like, I wish there was a way to know that you lived in the good old days before they were gone. Like, to me, that is Gary King as a character, and I love that. But I just think that there's a little bit too much. Like 12 pubs is probably too much. 5 or 6 characters is probably too much. I feel like you could scale this down, make this an hour and a half long movie, and make it a little bit scarier.
Well, it's only an hour and 40.
True, but it doesn't feel
6 hours.
Yeah, even I admit it feels like a 2 and a half hour long movie, where it's like, dude, like we have our characters and are on the way to our objective in like 20 minutes. And it's like an hour and 30 of this movie is a pub crawl, which is the point of the movie.
I was pleasantly surprised when I saw it was an hour and 40. I was like, are you fucking serious, dude?
Right. Because when I'm telling you, when Nick Frost stands up and he's like, hold on, who are you to say? And that's the part where the first time I watched it, I was like, dude, wrap it up. And it's like, I love this movie because I love Gary as like a character, because there's a lot of him that I can kind of like relate to, that like, sometimes you look back at high school and it's like, man, those were the days. It's like, no, they fucking weren't. It's like they were high school and it was fun, but that shouldn't be, you shouldn't be 25 or 35 years old thinking like, man, yeah, high school was the best.
Shouldn't be your identity. Yeah.
Right. And like, you can get like, I like Gary because there's something about him that I feel like society kind of got stuck on for a while with like the 80s, when like Stranger Things came out and people were like, weren't the 80s awesome? I'm like, no, they were not. They were more comforting because you knew obviously what's going to happen now.
People like me couldn't vote, motherfuckers. No.
Well, yeah, that and like, yeah, there was threats of Cold War and AIDS and like, so much stuff going on. It's like, it was not a better time just because it was the past. And I think all in all, I think I really do enjoy this movie, but at the same time, there's definitely some problems with it. It's the weakest of the three, but even still, I would give this probably like a C plus to like a B minus. It's definitely not as good as Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead, but ultimately I think it works on like a lot of levels that, it makes it, to me, it made me laugh, it made me smile, and it made me really like, man, that's fucking sad, by the end of it. I'm like, it at least accomplished like its emotional like resonance with me, but my brain still has a lot of like issues with it, but emotionally it worked for me just fine. But that's pretty much all I got. All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. We're going to jump at it. No. Yeah, I'll
you know what, man? Like, you just, I'm just doing like some like fucking final thoughts here because like I'm tapped. But the first 30 to 40 minutes of this movie, I really like borderline love, right? Like it's like all there, and I'm just like in. And then like the last hour of this movie, I really dislike and I borderline hate. And it's just, it really like tips the scale of the movie to me, like for me in terms of like, fuck, do I really hate this movie? Do I like? I'm not kidding, man. Like I just, it feels like it backslide or falls off a cliff. Like I can't. I don't know. It does not work for me at all. The tonal shift does not work for me at all. Like all of like the emotional impact or like the growth of these characters, I just stopped caring about because there's a fucking alien invasion outside, and like they're just, I don't know, like why are we still here? Like what are we doing? Yeah, man, I don't know. You know what? Fuck this. I hate this movie. I'm so sorry. I really try with this movie, dude. Like I said, like I wish we'd had like 2 hours, like 2 hours of like the opening 30 minutes of this movie. Like I wish we had that. Like just seeing like five mates out on a pub crawl, like reconnecting or like dealing with their. I don't think we need the genre shift in this movie. Like this movie would be so much better without the science fiction elements. I know that's my take, and I know that's what the Cornetto trilogy is not going for. Like, I mean, like that's completely the opposite of what the Cornetto trilogy is. Like I feel like the whole sort of like mission statement of the Cornetto trilogy is we're going to tell you a heartfelt and sympathetic story, but wrapped up in a huge genre type film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's exactly what Shaun of the Dead is. That's exactly what Hot Fuzz is. And that's exactly what this is. I just think the effectiveness of like I just don't care about anyone, and I think like that's where Danielle's comment like really kind of comes in and really like hits the nail on the head for me. It's just like, holy shit, I genuinely don't care about anyone, and therefore I don't really give a fuck about their journey. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It sucks. It's a bummer because, like I said, man, I really, really want to like this movie. And I guarantee you, I will give this more chances in the future, like I already have in the past. And like, it's probably going to fail to connect with me again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it sucks. It sucks because, like, I can't think of a movie in more recent memory that I've really wanted to connect with as much as this, but it doesn't get there for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. I think that there's a lot of it that comes down to it's a movie that asks a lot. It asks a lot of you for plot wise, for like emotional wise. Like, I think there's a lot.
And it rides on what's come before. Like, it rides a lot on like what's come from Hot Fuzz. It rides on the good standing of Shaun of the Dead. It rides on the good standing of Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Edgar Wright, like what you know about them. If you showed this to somebody with zero context of what the Cornetto trilogy is, or who any of those people are, it's not going to work. And it does. Like, I went into it with all of that context, and it didn't work for me. But I don't know.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like ultimately, I do disagree. I feel like it would stand, but it would not be. Like I said, it would be probably a C+ at best, maybe a B- at top tier. And I think that ultimately it succeeds in the fact that it's one of those movies where it's like, I feel like if you think about it for too long, it kind of ruins a lot of like, well, what is this movie exactly trying to say? But like, is it entertaining? Like, did it make me laugh? And it's like, yeah, it made me laugh like quite a bit. And like, humor is so subjective though, that it's like, the plot and the story, that's not subjective. They're not great. And there's just so much it feels very, very loose. But I feel like the humor aspects of this, like, absolutely crush it with like their character, your character kind of like chemistry and stuff like that. And to see these like white collar guys eventually devolve into these like high-fiving drunkards, that made me laugh. But I get it. It's definitely not for everybody. I mean, you like Step Brothers, so I mean, we'll have to just draw it. No, I'm just kidding. Step Brothers is pretty funny.
You don't like Step Brothers?
I got to be honest. I think that movie is over fucking rated. I think Step Brothers is way over. I love Richard Jenkins in that movie. I think he's the funniest part. Like, but I think that I saw Step Brothers in like IMAX, and I remember sitting there watching. I was like, I mean, it's pretty funny,
okay,
but like,
there's your dude, you can watch that on a mobile phone. You know,
I mean, I've watched it like, you know, in the past, like just, you know, it was on like Hulu or something like that. And I love like the other guys. I like Talladega Nights pretty well, but there are just some like Will Ferrell movies.
Those three movies that you just mentioned, Step Brothers, Talladega Nights, and the other guys, probably three of the best comedies in the last 15 years. But
okay. We really are ships in the night. Sorry. I love like
20 years, right? Because like that was, yeah.
I guess I think everybody can agree on stuff like Anchorman, but like the World's End is that kind of humor that like it's not going to land for every single person, because it is almost like very British humor, like at times where it's so quick and it's so like back and forth. I love
British humor, dude. One of my favorite shows is IT Crowd. Like I fucking love. Have you haven't seen the IT Crowd, have you?
No, yeah, I've seen like because it's got that, I can't remember the guy's name. We used to watch it a long time ago, but that and like the Young Ones and stuff like that. Like, but I feel like it's got that not British humor of cleverness, but British humor of like silliness. When
Dryness?
It's like, okay, like this is kind of goofy. And like personally, as someone who's like a huge fan of like Conan O'Brien and very silly, like kind of humor, this movie works for me in that way, but it's not as smart as the first two. And I think that is a problem for it, because it's got some clever moments that really do work. But for the most part, it's the silliness is kind of what makes these characters, charming, like towards the parts where they get hammered drunk. But the humor part of it is just so subjective. But, I think we'll close with that. I'll go ahead and get us out of here.
Well, let's read some comments. We got some good comments.
Oh, okay, go for it.
I think this is this is the first time I've seen this gentleman commenting. He might be a mate of yours, Chris Kennedy.
Oh yeah, I love Chris. He actually co-wrote our theme song. He wrote most of it, actually.
Oh, badass! Yeah, I've definitely heard his name. Well, he's got a positive comment, which is awesome. He says, while I agree that World's End may not be as immediately likable as the other two movies in the Cornetto trilogy, I must say that it definitely shows more prominent emotional depth than both Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, with the hopeless man-child anti-hero character of Gary King. After my first watch, I will say that I was not immediately impressed. However, I was comparing it to the two masterpieces that came before it. After a few more rewatches, I began to appreciate it for what it is. Though I love both Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, they're both parodies of a horror and a buddy cop/action film, respectively, and both are not exactly what I would call a stellar representation of either genre. However, The World's End is not just a parody of a sci-fi, but standalone sci-fi is a great sci-fi film. But a standalone sci-fi as a great sci-fi film. Edgar Wright did an outstanding job of creating and capturing a unique and witty plot, but also found a way to tell a story about true human nature and its downfalls, as well as interweave this storyline with the same great recurring faces we've grown to love. This film may not be the greatest at first viewing, but give it a chance and it will get better and better with each and every watch.
Interesting. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that a lot, man. Let's read one from our boy Jose. Jose,
hell yeah.
We fucking love you, baby. We love you. He says, The World's End was an interesting experience for me as I likened it to From Dusk Till Dawn, where I adored the more grounded character-based first half and liked the outrageous second half.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's a very interesting comp, yeah. He says, I have a friend who is very much like Gary in that he never grew out of his peak in his teenage years. I've seen this guy, I've hung out with this guy, so I get why the rest of the group both go along with the Golden Mile at first and gradually pity him. My one complaint is Gary basically learns nothing by the end of the film. Yes, he got the network off the earth, but he ruined the world as a result. Even worse, he's rewarded for it with blanks of his buddies as teenagers. He's still the same stunted adult as he was in the beginning. As someone who's still very close to his friend group from high school, it's been a joy to see most of us found a balance between growing into the adults we needed to become while still keeping a bit of who we are as teenagers. A part of me wonders what the movie would have been like had Edgar Wright told a simple character-based film of 5 friends coming to terms with their adult lives when one of them won't let go of the past. That's the movie I want to see, Jose. That's the one that I was just talking about.
But I feel like what would be your story, though? I think that's the problem is like they just go to a pub the whole time. Like, I'd
watch it with that cast. I'd fucking watch it, dude. You know what I mean?
Would, but
like,
yeah, I feel like it'd be hard to like write stuff around though, because I kind of thought that as well. I think the original movie is called Crawl, what he wrote, and it's about just these people that go to a pub crawl, and then they shoehorn this sci-fi thing in when they made World's End or whatever.
We're going to end it with Ollie Brooks. Thank you so much, Ollie, for commenting. Appreciate you. He says, The World's End is the worst of the Cornetto trilogy for me. Started off good with the pub crawl, but lost me with the blue-blooded aliens. Can't beat Hot Fuzz. Hope you guys are doing well. Looking forward to the next Bad Crystal. Fuck yeah, man.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, I like Ollie a lot.
Thanks so much for commenting. Thanks so much for listening to Bad Crystal. That's coming back soon. We'll have more to talk about that soon.
Yeah, that's dope. The house is still divided. It's like some people love it, some people hate it. Like I do like the sci-fi parts of it. I think it's a little weak, like it's a little bland. But I feel like if you kept that same premise of them being, replaced, but make it scarier, make them more of a threat, then I feel like I can actually get a little bit more. Like, I love these characters. I think they're funny. I love their chemistry, but there needs to be more of a threat of like, I love seeing Dylan Moran get his guts ripped out in Shaun of the Dead. It's like, show me that happening to Nick Frost and I will start to feel even more for these characters. But as of now, I identify with a lot of them just because I think they're funny and they remind me of people that I kind of like grew up with. And like, I think The World's End works for people, but it's definitely a more niche audience than Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead for sure. I think it's a lot more of like a narrow audience, and that's not anybody's fault but the movies, really. But
it's not getting my parking money.
Well, I got your 2.5 hours. Don't worry, guys.
Damn it.
We appreciate you listening to me drag Zohead through the second half of this. We've really we really enjoyed talking about, definitely both of us, the first half of it. I've enjoyed this. I'm glad to like wrap up the Cornetto trilogy.
It's always fun.
Right. And I honestly, a lot of it was just, I'm happy to always talk about like the Cornetto trilogy because I think it's up there with shit like, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, shit like that. Like, I love the Cornetto trilogy. Dude, it's
Get us out of here, dude. Wrap this shit up.
Fucking
Get
eat
us
shit.
out of here.
The Cornetto, I mean, what is The Godfather, really? No, I think when you think of like great, like Planet of the Apes, Lord of the Rings, but I definitely think the Cornetto
Guy
trilogy
gets
is
a
like,
ring, goes to a mountain, drops it in the lava. Bada bing, bada boom.
But that's going to wrap it up with us for the Cornetto trilogy. We might pop back in someday with some episodes of Spaced, or maybe if he makes another fucking movie anytime soon. It's been a minute, but I'm excited to see.
He hasn't even hinted at anything.
Yeah, I read something years ago, maybe 2 years ago, that he and Nick Frost, or him and Simon Pegg, were working together again on something. I think they were just writing.
Did I not read that he was going to do The Running Man?
Yeah, he's been, I don't know if that's, locked in or not, but yeah, I've heard that for a few years now, that he's going to be doing The Running Man, which I'm down for, but it is weird to see him. The only thing I think he's done that's on his own is Scott Pilgrim.
No, dude, our boy is bringing us the goods. You ready? In 2024, Wright signed on to direct a remake of the 1968 film Barbarella, starring Sydney Sweeney.
Huh,
Come on,
that's
man.
interesting.
I want to see those. I want to see those Barbarellas.
I've seen bits and pieces of like Barbarella stuff, but I've never really. Who's in the original one? Is it Barbara Streisand or something?
It is
Barbarella.
Jane Fonda.
Jane Fonda. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Well, let's Jane Fonda our way out of here. We've appreciated you guys listening to this episode. We know it's been a whopper. We know it's been a while since we've done something, and I'm happy to wrap up the Cornetto trilogy, even if I had to drag Zoheb's face through broken glass to get here. I like this movie a lot. I'm glad to hear people from both sides of the aisle say like, yeah, I like it, but I think consensus, I like it, but it's got problems. It has good moments. But at the same time, it's definitely lacking something from the first two. And I think that's a totally fair kind of thing. I think if you like this movie, it's like, that's nice. Good for you. But it's not one of those things for like somebody comes up and says they don't like Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz. It's like, well, something's wrong with your brain. Like there's something wrong with you. Like those are undeniable. But I've had a lot of fun talking about it, and we will catch you guys on the next one. Be sure to check out patreon.com/Midnight Double Feature and come listen to us talk about the new Deadpool Wolverine, which we are about to go do. So we will catch you guys on the next one.